Blissful Bookshelf. Chapter 315, Soul Depth 10. 1. The stone of insight that we use is known as the inferior stone of insight, and it can only detect soul depth of 9. 0 and below. That is to say, we can only check the soul depth of 1 below the level of a 3-star master teacher. Once it exceeds that level, the stone of insight will crumble. Pavilion Master Jiang nodded as he pointed at the powder on the floor. Otherwise, given how resilient the stones of insight are, how could it possibly shatter upon contact? Now that you speak of it, it does make sense. Everyone was stunned once more. As a precious jade, the stone of insight was extremely tough. It would be difficult for even a sword to leave a mark on it. Yet, it crumbled upon contact. The situation was indeed bizarre. Pavilion Master means to say that Zhang Shi's soul depth is possibly above 9. 0? Catching the gist of the other party's words, Elder Zhu said in a quivering tone. What did 9? 0 mean? It was the standard of a 3-star master teacher. A fellow who wasn't even 20 yet had reached such a level. Upon hearing those words, everyone immediately understood the underlying meaning behind this situation. Everyone was dumbfounded. The heck? Just moments ago, you were tested to have achieved 5. 1, and it would already be astounding for you to break through to 6. 0, yet, judging from Pavilion Master Zhang's words, it wasn't capped at that level. It is simple to check whether the conjecture is true or not. I have an intermediate stone of insight with me. We will know the answer once we put it to the test. With a grim expression, Pavilion Master Jiang flicked his wrist, and a jade stone appeared in his hand. Unlike the stone of insight Elder Zhu just passed him, it assumed a more brilliant and eye-catching appearance. The lines on its surface were much more compact, and those with low cultivation would find themselves suffering severe vertigo from a mere glance at it. Intermediate stone of insight. Every single one of those was incomparably valuable. In the entire Tianwu Kingdom Master Teacher Pavilion, there was only one of it. Senior Zhang, I will have to trouble you to give it a test. Pavilion Master Jiang handed the stone of insight over. After the cultivation technique was relayed to him, he had already affirmed Zhang Xian to be Yang Shi's student. Thus, he began to call him senior. The Pavilion Master of the Master Teacher Pavilion was a figure which could even disregard the Emperor of the Kingdom. If it was anyone else, he would definitely be troubled to have to call a fellow who was younger than his son as senior. However, after personally witnessing Yang Shi's fearsome abilities, coupled with the saying among master teachers that capability, instead of age, is what that determines one's seniority, he did not feel as awkward addressing Zhang Xian as senior after addressing him once. Zhang Xian took the stone of insight and grabbed it in his hand. After which, he started to enter the heart of tranquil water once more. Wang. Hearing a light buzz, Zhang Xian glanced downward. A bright radiance shot out from the intermediate stone of insight, illuminating the surroundings. Slowly, a line of digits floated into appearance. Upon seeing the numbers on it, everyone was stunned. For a moment, the entire Master Teacher Pavilion went silent. Then, an uproar broke out. TTE 10. 1. His soul depth is 10. 1. They had thought that the other party was bragging, but to think that it had reached 10. 1. At 3. 0, 1 was eligible for the 1-star Master Teacher examination. At 6. 0, 1 could take the 2-star examination. At 10. 1 it was more than sufficient for 1 to take the 3-star examination. Wasn't it 5? 1 just now. Mo Hongyi was on the verge of tears. He felt as though the other party was here just to embarrass him. Putting aside the fact the other party broke all of his records, more importantly, he refuted every single thing that he doubted. Blissful Bookshelf. When he said that his supporting occupations didn't meet the requirement, the other party took out his emblems. When he said that the other party hasn't reached Zongshi realm yet, he achieved a breakthrough on the spot. And the worst part, when he said that his soul depth was insufficient, he showed him a soul depth that was sufficient for him to even take the 3-star master teacher examination. Couldn't you play fairly? If there was a burrow in the ground, he would definitely dive in immediately. He didn't even feel like living on anymore. Lu Xun also felt a sweet sensation at his throat as he nearly spurted a mouthful of fresh blood. When he reached Heart of Tranquil Water and his soul depth was tested to be 1.8, he was so excited that he couldn't sleep for the entire night. He had thought that he was a genius and that he could wander around the vast world freely. However, when he saw Zhang Shi's soul depth, he realized that the little bit of soul depth he had meant nothing at all. He turned to Mo Hongyi and shook his head in sympathy. This number 1 genius had suffered so much blows that it would be a huge blessing if he could recover this trauma at all. Zhang Laoshi, that's enough of you. Even a powerful figure like Mo Hongyi had been reduced to such a state because of you. Knowing that the gap between him and Zhang Laoshi was irreconcilable, Lu Xun gave up on all thoughts of comparing with the latter. Reached 10.1. Zhang Xian was also astonished for a moment before nodding in agreement. Seemed like the golden page didn't cancel out his previously accumulated soul depth. Instead, it was as impressive as before, increasing his soul depth by 5.0 once more. Originally, everyone was already despondent from this situation, but after seeing Zhang Xian's look of realization, they spurted blood once more. You didn't even know your own soul depth. Can you not be so dense? Zhang Shi, it is hard to raise one's soul depth. This is, suppressing his shock, Elder Zhu couldn't hold himself back any longer and asked. Soul depth assumed a similar concept as one's age. Even if one had a good method to cultivate it, one could only accumulate it bit by bit. To increase it from 5.1 to 10.1 in an instant, wasn't this a little too fast? Furthermore, to not even know the extent of the growth of his soul depth, could you be any more foolish? Upon hearing Elder Zhu's question, everyone swiftly turned over to look, curious to know what had happened. Zhang Xian hesitated for a moment, a look of difficulty apparent on his face, before he sighed, never mind, I doubt all of you will give up if I don't account for it today. It is indeed true that I don't know how much my soul depth had increased by. That's because back then when I reached Heart of Tranquil Water, my teacher sealed my soul depth, and he sternly instructed me to only unseal it when my strength reaches a certain level. It must be because I had reached Zongshi realm and regained some of my soul depth that my soul depth experienced a sudden leap. Zhang Xian couldn't possibly speak about the Golden Page and the Library of Heaven's Path, so he had conjured up an excuse beforehand and pushed the blame to that imaginary teacher. Sealed your soul depth? There is such a thing. How strong must your soul depth be that it had to be sealed? A commotion broke out. A sealed soul depth was unheard of. But if that wasn't the case, then there was really no other way to explain the sudden increase by 5.0 of Zhang Xian's soul depth. Shocked, they surveyed Zhang Xian as though examining a freak. How high must one's soul depth be to require sealing? And what master-teacher rank had his teacher achieved to be capable of such a feat? Initially, they had thought that Zhang Xian was harboring some incredible method to raise one's soul depth. However, after listening to his explanation, they realized that his soul depth was something that came with him since birth, and it was impossible for them to match up to him. Some people are indeed born with overwhelming soul depth. Rumor has it that Empyrean Kong Shi possessed innate saint soul depth, which was comparable to that of a 9-star master teacher. From birth, he was already destined to be extraordinary. Eventually, he went on to climb to the peak of the world and achieved many great things. Pavilion Master Jiang said. Innate saint soul depth? Comparable to a 9-star master teacher. Everyone was shocked. Although they didn't know how much soul depth one needed to become a 9-star master teacher, going by the 3.0 per rank convention, a 9-star master teacher should possess a soul depth of 27.0 or above. A soul depth of 27 from birth? Kong Shi wasn't the only one. There was a genius in Xianyuan conferred Kingdom Master Teacher Pavilion that reached Heart of Tranquil Water at 17. During his first test, his soul depth had already reached a frightening level of 9.3, which is sufficient for one to take the 3-star Master Teacher examination. As the Pavilion Master, Jiang Shu was well informed of a lot of secrets. These talents may be rare, but they definitely exist. Even so, if one's soul depth is too high and one's cultivation is unable to catch up, it could possibly result in unwanted consequences. Perhaps it was due to this that your teacher chose to seal your soul depth. With this, he turned to look at Zhang Xian in envy. It was no wonder why a formidable figure like Yang Shi would take him in as his student. Possessing such soul depth from birth made him a rare genius destined to be a master teacher. As long as he doesn't die, he would definitely join the ranks of a 4-star master teacher. So that's the case, that's true. Soul depth is extremely hard to raise. One could only raise it by 0 point something or 1 point something with decades of effort. If everyone were to start out the same as us, how could there possibly be 6-star, 7-star, or even higher ranked master teachers in the world? Indeed. The world is big, and there are countless experts. Even though Tianwu Kingdom is the largest country among the 13 surrounding states, we are only a countryside kingdom to the truly powerful countries. After hearing Pavilion Master Zhang's explanation, everyone came to a realization. The world was big and it was filled with countless experts. Many things that seemed illogical to them was simply because of ignorance from their lack of exposure. Similarly, the thought of anyone possessing such high soul depth at birth had never crossed Zhang Xian's mind. Therefore, when he heard Pavilion Master Zhang's words, he too was surprised. However, since Pavilion Master Jiang had justified his case for him, he couldn't be bothered to refute his words. With that, he turned to Mo Hongyi once more. Occupation, cultivation, and soul depth, I have fulfilled all them. Mo sure. Is there any more prerequisites to taking the 2-star Master Teacher examination? Why don't you list them all out at a single go, so that I can make preparations for them together? There isn't anything else. Mo Hongyi felt a burning sensation on his face. His body trembled, and his face was as bitter as a bitter gourd. He wanted to stop the other party from taking the examination so that he could amaze others, yet not only did he not amaze anyone, he only made a fool out of himself. Since there isn't anything else, then I should be able to take the 2-star Master Teacher examination, right? Zhang Xian's eyes lit up. Of course, Mo Hongyi suppressed his urge to spurt blood. He already knew how monstrous this fellow was, so why did he still pit himself against him for nothing? Not only did he lose his reputation as the #1 genius of Tianwu Kingdom, he even became an egotistic laughingstock. Since the criteria are met, let's start the examination now. Afraid that Mo Hongyi would commit suicide if Zhang Xian were to continue asking, Elder Zhu hurriedly interjected. There are also 5 tests to the 2-star Master Teacher examination, and they consist of the same supporting occupation pavilion, puppet hall, cultivation technique ocean, and unerring pavilion, albeit with a higher level of difficulty. For example, in the supporting occupation pavilion, an apothecary will have to guide the puppet to forge a grade 2 pill, and a painter will have to guide the puppet to create a 4th-level painting. These 4 tests are the same, and the only difference is the House of Trust. The first test, House of Trust, tests the trust level of a master teacher's students. In the 1-star examination, the chosen students can be under one's tutelage for several years with no age limit. Thus, many people chose to circumvent the rules by bringing a student whom they've taught from young. Naturally, the student would be extremely close to them, making it easy for them to pass the test. However, the 2-star examination won't be that easy. For the 2-star examination, the examinee has to accept a student on the spot, and within 10 days, one has to establish a trust level of 40 with them. Elder Zhu explained the rules of the tests of the 2-star Master Teacher examination. Chapter 316, The True Test of the House of Trust, accept students on the spot. Have their trust level reach 40 within 10 days? Mo Hongyi frowned. Compared to the passing criteria of accumulating trust level of 50 for the 1-star master teacher examination, trust level of 40 sounds easier. However, in actual fact, the difficulty was several times greater. For the 1-star master teacher examination, many examinees brought in young students whom they have taught for a minimum of 3 years to meet the trust level of 50. But to pass the 2-star master teacher examination, they only had 10 days to establish a trust level of 40 with their students. The difficulty of the matter was unimaginable. The House of Trust examination will be placed at the very last. Both of you can start with the other 4 tests now. After introducing the rules, Elder Zhu turned to Zhang Xian and Mo Hongyi. All right. Zhang Xian nodded and took a step forward to enter the hall. However, he had barely taken 2 steps when Elder Zhu stopped him. Zhang Shi, wait a moment, intrigued, Zhang Xian turned around. Ah, it's like this. Can you take the examination after Mo Shi? I'm afraid that after you enter, something might happen to the puppets. If so, Mo Shi wouldn't be able to take the test. Elder Zhu said awkwardly. This fellow broke almost all of the puppets during his examination. Who knows how long it would take before those puppets could recover. Elder Zhu was already dreading the aftermath. He was afraid that Zhang Xian would wreak havoc and damage the 2-star master teacher equipment as well. If that was the case, Mo Hongyi wouldn't be able to take the examination. Ah, all right. Zhang Xian answered in embarrassment. He didn't think that he would leave such a bad impression on the other party after just one examination. Of course, if he were to know that everyone thought of his act of taking the examination equivalent to challenging and wrecking a dojo, he would be even more speechless. Mo Hongyi was indeed worthy of his title as a genius of Tianwu Kingdom. He managed to storm through all of the examinations within a mere 2 hours. Even though he didn't achieve astonishing results like Zhang Xian, he did break several of the past records. Then, it was Zhang Xian's turn. It was a total mess. Almost all of the test's mechanisms were wrecked by the time Zhang Xian walked out. Looking at the destroyed Master Teacher Pavilion, Pavilion Master Jiang, Elder Zhu, Wu Shi, and the others were on the verge of tears. Even though the Master Teacher Pavilion puppets had the ability of self-regeneration, resources had to be devoted to it. Considering all the puppets for the 1-star and 2-star master teacher examinations were destroyed, who knows what kind of heavy price they had to pay before they could revert them back to their original state. You have both passed the first 4 tests. For the final one, House of Trust, I will give both of you 10 days to complete the task. You are allowed to accept one or several students, and as long as the trust level for any one of them in you is 40 and above, you will officially become a 2-star master teacher. Elder Zhu began explaining the procedures for the final segment now that the duo had passed the other tests. 1 student is enough? Zhang Xian asked doubtfully. That's right. Elder Zhu stroked his beard. 10 days, Zhang Xian contemplated for a moment. Can I just accept a student right now? 10 days for a 2-star master teacher examination was simply too long for him. If possible, he wanted to accept a student on the spot and raise his trust level to 40. Zhang Xian had the confidence to do so. Calm down, there are some requirements to the student you accept. Elder Zhu shook his head. He quickly surveyed the surroundings and said, for the 2-star master teacher examination, I have another mission to assign to Zhang Shi and Mo Shi, so I will have to trouble all of you to return for now. In addition, they will be leaving Tianwu Kingdom and will be uncontactable for a short period of time. However, please be at ease, there isn't any danger to this mission. Another mission? They need to leave the kingdom. Why haven't I heard of it before? It's fine as long as there's no danger to it. Not expecting the 2-star master teacher examination to be so complicated, the crowd was stunned with the additional mission that even required the duo to leave the kingdom. Nonetheless, despite their urge to inquire more about it, they could only shake their heads while leaving the examination hall, with Elder Zhu having no intention to shed light on the matter. Zhao Ye and the others also glanced at Zhang Xian before walking out. Soon, Only Zhang Xian, Mo Hongyi, and the 3 two-star master teachers were left in the room. Alright, Elder Zhu, you should tell them about it now. Pavilion Master Jiang gestured. Elder Zhu nodded. Turning to Zhang Xian and Mo Hongyi, he said, actually, what I just told to the others about you having to go out of the city to complete a mission is a lie. This is so that the both of you can complete the House of Trust test without causing unnecessary trouble. Confused by the situation, Zhang Xian and Mo Hongyi exchanged glances. Just like what I previously mentioned, the House of Trust test requires you to accept new students and induce a trust level of 40 with them. However, both of you can't use your current identity to carry out the test. Otherwise, there will surely be countless people who will be willing to come under your tutelage, and it won't be difficult for you to reach the required trust level either. Elder Zhu said. The duo nodded. Even though they didn't want to admit to it, but what the other party said was true. Having passed the 4 previous tests for the 2-star master teacher examination, they were currently potential 2-star master teachers. If they were to accept students now, countless people would definitely rush up to them, begging to be their students. It would then be a walk in the park for the 2 of them to induce a trust level of 40 in their new students. If we can't use our current identity, then, Mo Hongyi asked doubtfully. He didn't seem to be well versed in the rules of the 2-star master teacher examination either. The master teacher pavilion will assign you 2 new identities and alter your appearances before sending you 2 into Tianwu Academy as ordinary teachers. Within 10 days, the 2 of you have to use your new identity to recruit students and bring their trust level up to 40 to pass the test. In this period of time, you 2 are not to reveal your identity or contact anyone. Otherwise it will be taken as a fail. Elder Zhu said strictly. Hiding our identities and become ordinary teachers. We are not to reveal our identities or contact anyone. Zhang Xian and Mo Hongyi were taken aback. They didn't expect the 2-star master teacher House of Trust test to be so bizarre. But after giving it some thought, it made sense. The identity of a master teacher was a huge trust booster in itself. If they were to accept students using their current identity, it wouldn't be too hard for them to pass the examination. This was even more so for Mo Hongyi. As the number 1 genius of the kingdom, he would surely have many supporters. It would be a breeze for him to find a few people who had a trust level of 40 in him. However, if they were to assume another identity for this task, it would be a whole new story. If they were to start from scratch and still be able to raise their students' trust in them to 40, it would show that they truly possessed outstanding aptitude toward teaching and that they were worthy of the position of a 2-star master teacher. The reason why I intentionally told the others that you have to leave the city to accomplish a mission is so that no one will suspect anything even if 2 new teachers were to appear in the academy. Elder Zhu explained with a smile. The duo immediately came to a realization. With Elder Zhu announcing it, it probably wouldn't take long before the entire capital knew that they had to leave the city to accomplish a mission. In that case, little doubt would be cast on their new identities when they enter Tianwu Academy. If no one carries any doubt toward their new identity, naturally, their previous identity would be completely useless. It would be no different from starting anew. Alright, the Master Teacher Pavilion had already prepared your new identities, and these new identities would be able to pass any identity check in the city. Tomorrow morning, following the departure of a few teachers, Tianwu Academy will be conducting a public recruitment to add new blood to their team. Both of you shall attend the recruitment. Just a heads up, none of the staff in the academy, including the principal, is aware of your true identities. Therefore, the 2 of you can only depend on yourselves. After 10 days, you will bring your newly accepted students here. As long as their trust level reaches 40, you will be considered to have passed the examination, and we will present the 2-star master teacher emblem to you straight away. There won't be any question symposium for the 2-star master teacher examination. Elder Zhu said as he passed 2 books over. Grabbing one of the books, Zhang Xian started browsing through it. Xueqing, an ordinary teacher who passed the teacher examination in Tianwu Kingdom's Quanhai City. 24-year-old, Tongxian Realm Primary Cultivation, served as a relief teacher in Quanhai City for a year. The information of the person he had to disguise himself as was written in the book, all the way from his birth to his present state. The person he was disguising as couldn't be considered as a genius, but he wasn't mediocre either. He barely made it as a teacher, and even though there weren't any fatal flaws on him, there weren't any glorious achievements either. Soon, he finished reading through the entire book and memorized everything regarding his assigned new identity. The preparation made for the Master Teacher Pavilion examination cannot be underestimated. Lu Cheng was a true existent figure and anyone could easily uncover his background with little effort. However, no one knew where the real Lu Laoshi was at the moment. He probably signed some kind of agreement with the Teacher Guild, and in order to allow smooth progression of the examination, he hid himself up. Turning to Mo Hongyi, the other party had also finished browsing through the book. The content of his book was probably also the identity and the history of the person he would be disguised as. Alright, here is a mask from our Master Teacher Pavilion. After wearing this, you will take on the appearance of the person you will be disguised as. The examination will start tomorrow. Within 10 days, you must bring your students here to take the trust level test. Otherwise, it will be considered as a fail. Elder Zhu passed the duo a human skin mask each. The moment Zhang Xian placed the mask on his face, he felt a surge of coolness as the mask fused fully into his skin, making it impossible to touch or see it. Zhang Xian didn't know what his current appearance was like, but when he turned to Mo Hongyi, he realized that the other party's outer appearance was completely different from before. It was as though he was an entirely different person. Even his aura had changed. As expected of an object from the Master Teacher Pavilion, it was indeed formidable. There is still some time left today for both of you to make any necessary preparations. You can use this time to tie up any loose ends on your side. However, you mustn't tell anyone where you are going and who you are disguising as. After which, Elder Zhu reminded them once more. The duo nodded. They were two potential 2-star master teachers for their Master Teacher Pavilion, and naturally, Elder Zhu hoped that they wouldn't be disqualified due to their carelessness. Zhang Xian had no qualms on the requirements of this test. Instead, he felt thrilled. It just so happened that his original plan was to head to Tianwu Kingdom to accept a few students and earn their gratitude so as to form the Golden Page. In a sense, this examination coincidentally aligned with his goals. Elder Zhu, I would like to read some books regarding master teachers. May I know where they are? Before heading to Tianwu Kingdom, he wanted to visit the library of the Master Teacher Pavilion to look for information on Empyrean Kongshi, as well as Fighter 8 Dan Zongshi Realm Cultivation Technique manuals. Previously in Red Lotus City, he had already collected quite a number of Zongshi Realm secret manuals. At this point, he only needed a few hundred more books to form the Heaven's Path Divine Art before he could start cultivating. In any case, he had 10 days to spare. As long as he accesses sufficient cultivation technique manuals, he would be able to use this period of time to reach Zongshi Realm Pinnacle. You wish to browse through the books? The library is over there. However, you are only a 1-star master teacher, so you are only entitled to look through the 1-star library. The 2-star library is still out of limits to you. Elder Zhu casually pointed. All right. Zhang Xian replied. Then, he started walking toward the Master Teacher Pavilion 1-star library. The 1-star library was vast. The colossal amount of information and techniques recorded in this extensive collection, spanning across the various occupations, was unimaginable. With a mere glance, Zhang Xian was filled with amazement. This library was much larger than that of Tianxian Kingdom's book collection vault. Not only were there significantly more books, the knowledge contained within them was also spread over a wider range. Geography, savage beast pills, secret realms, artifacts. It felt as though everything that one could know was in here. So many books. I have to finish reading through them before tomorrow morning, Zhang Xian sighed. Previously, he had spent 5 entire days to finish duplicating all of the books in Tianxian Kingdom's book collection vault. Now, even with his new book duplicating method, it would take at least half a day of effort to finish copying the books in the one-star library. Let's begin. Knowing that he was lacking on time, he started into a sprint. With the increase of his soul depth and attainment of Zongshi realm cultivation, his endurance was much higher than before. Unlike before, he was able to collect books at a faster speed for a longer period of time before needing to rest. Walalala. Rows after rows of books formed in his mind. Slowly, Zhang Xian lost track of time. Physician Bai Chan was on the brink of a mental breakdown. He had found a residence near the master-teacher pavilion, but the price was terrifying. He had to devote almost all of the money he earned in his lifetime for it. However, in comparison to his life, what did these material possessions count as? Young Master Zhang Xian is at the master-teacher pavilion. Is he taking the master-teacher examination? After finding a residence, he followed his supervisor, Sun Chang, to the master-teacher pavilion. The young master is the direct disciple of the old master. Naturally, there is no occupation more fitting for him than a master-teacher, Sun Chang nodded. Let's hurry. Perhaps, we might even see the young master amaze the crowd. Amaze the crowd? Physician Bai Chan shook his head. The master-teacher examination isn't easy. Each of the 5 tests is harder than the previous. Your young master may be incredible, but he's still young. He may be able to pass the tests successfully, but it will be difficult for him to amaze the crowd, especially after Mo Hongyi had broken all of the previous records. Mo Hongyi. Sun Chang glanced at Physician Bai Chan yesterday. Right after they arrived at Tianwu Kingdom, they had coincidentally bumped into this fellow. After which, he had busied himself the entire night looking for a suitable residence for the group. Thus, he hadn't caught wind of the reputation of this famous genius before. That's right. Mo Hongyi is the #1 genius of our Tianwu Kingdom. When he took the master-teacher examination, he broke all of the records, earning him the title of a once-in-a-millennium genius. Reverence was reflected in Physician Bai Chan's eyes. His soul depth even reached an unparalleled level of 6.0. Pavilion Master Jiang once said that it would be impossible for anyone capable of surpassing him to appear in a century. Soul depth of 6.0. Once-in-a-millennium genius. Sun Chang was astonished. He didn't expect there to be such a genius in the kingdom. The two chatted while they walked and soon, they arrived at the master-teacher pavilion. Just as they were about to enter, a guard walked over. Physician Bai, upon seeing the duo, the guard's eyes lit up and he hurried over to them. Squadron Leader Yao, you're here as well. Physician Bai Chan nodded. The identity of the guard was Squadron Leader Yao, whom they just met last night. However, at this moment, Squadron Leader Yao didn't have the authoritative aura he had yesterday. His face was still swollen, but in his eyes, one could see the irrepressible shock. Put on. Kneeling to the floor, Squadron Leader Yao said, "Thank you, Physician Bai, for saving my life." Saving your life? Physician Bai Chan was bewildered. He couldn't understand what was going on. Squadron Leader Yao, what's wrong? When did he save the other party? If not for your advice, I might have arrogantly and foolishly tried to seek vengeance on Zhang Shi. It's thanks to your words that I avoided a crisis, Squadron Leader Yao said. As the guard of the princess, he was able to witness the entire process of Zhang Xian's master-teacher examination and he nearly fainted from shock. Zhang Xian was half a teacher to the princess, Pavilion Master Zhang Sr., the direct disciple of a master teacher who was likely to be ranked above 3-star, an existence who was about to become a 2-star master teacher. None of those identities was something a mere guard like him could offend. If not for Physician Bai Chan's advice, he might have really tried to wreak havoc with the other party. Moreover, even if he were killed by the other party, probably no one would cry for him. This was too frightening. Zhang Shi. Bai Chan was confused. You mean young Master Zhang Xian? That's right. Zhang Shi is too incredible. Not only did he break all of Mo Hongyi's 1-star master teacher test records, he even broke all of the records of the 2-star examination as well. How could I be so blind to even think of wanting to exact vengeance on such a genius? I must be tired of living, breaking Mo Hongyi's records. What happened? Physician Bai Chan was stunned. You don't know? Oh, you weren't at the master teacher pavilion, so it's natural for you not to know of it. Today, I came under the orders to protect the princess. Squadron leader Yao hurriedly recounted what he saw and heard. Trust level of 85, a score of 130 at the supporting occupation hall, defeating the puppet in the puppet hall with a single move, reaching Zongshi realm on the spot, passing the 4 tests of the 2-star master teacher examination. Pavilion Master Zhang Sr. After hearing the other party's story, Physician Bai Chan's eyes reddened, and his body trembled. He was on the verge of crying. What kind of monster did he offend? He had just said that it would be difficult for the other party to break Mo Hongyi's record. Not only did the other party did, he even did so with such gusto he had intended to immediately turn against the other party once he purged the lethal poison from his body. Given his connections, it should be easy to teach that fellow a lesson. But after hearing Squadron Leader Yao's words, he realized that his connections meant nothing compared to Zhang Xian. With his 2-star master teacher and pavilion master Zhang's senior statuses, even the emperor would have no choice but to obey his commands. It was laughable that he even tried to take advantage of the other party's student. He had truly tightened the noose on himself. He must be tired of living. Zhang Shi, where is he now? With a tearful face, Physician Bai Chan asked. The master teacher pavilion had assigned him a mission that might require him to leave the capital for a period of time. Squadron leader Yao contemplated for a moment before clasping his fist. In gratitude for your assistance, I will treat you to a meal some other time. I still have something to attend to, so I'll take my leave now. After which, he turned around and left. I told you that young master would amaze everyone in the examination, see? Sun Cheng lifted his head proudly. Yes, yes. Physician Bai Chan suddenly thought of something, and his eyes lit up. Since Zhang Shi has a mission to attend to, his students will be free. I should bring them to the residence and serve them properly. After hearing Zhang Xian's affairs, all thoughts of rebellion vanished from his mind. The tear in his relationship with the other party came from him trying to take advantage of his student, so he was considering of making use of this opportunity to mend the relationship. Ah, all right. Sun Cheng nodded and the duo walked into the master-teacher pavilion. Lu Shi, Zhang Shi told me to tell you all to find a place to rest first and take care of his students first. He might take some time for his 2-star master-teacher examination. In the master-teacher pavilion, an apprentice walked up to Lu Ling. Thank you for relaying the message. After the apprentice left, Lu Ling turned to the crowd. Since senior will still take some time, why don't we look for a lodging first? All right. But where should we live at? We aren't too familiar with Tianwu Royal City, and if we were to live in an area too remote, what if teacher is unable to find us after he returns? Xiaoya asked. This, Lu Ling frowned. If nothing else works, we should just stay at the inn we stayed at yesterday. Before he could finish his words, a shout sounded behind them. Lu Shi, young masters, and young mistresses, I have already prepared a residence for all of you. Please follow me. Turning around, they saw Physician Bai Chan, the person who had taken advantage of Xiaoya and even acted haughtily in front of them the night before. Nonetheless, at this moment, he had assumed a subservient attitude of a servant, as though he was afraid he would incur their displeasure. What in the world is going on? Lu Ling and the others were stunned. What did you say? Someone broke Mo Hongyi's records consecutively. Pavilion Master Zhang Sr. His teacher is a master teacher ranked above 3-star. Passed the 2-star master teacher examination. Like a hurricane, the events in the master teacher pavilion swiftly blew onto the streets, and into the ears of the clan heads of the prestigious clans. Master teachers were the foundation of a country. And 2-star master teacher was an existence which stood at the zenith of Tianwu Kingdom. Having passed the examination and broken all of Genius Mo Hongyi's record, it would be impossible to conceal the news even if the Master-Teacher Pavilion wanted to. Such a formidable figure actually existed in our kingdom. Men, send an edict to bestow this Zhang Shi the name of King Xian. He will be permitted to enter the royal palace freely without requiring a summon. At the topmost throne in the royal palace, a middle-aged man declared after reading the report in his hands. However, before he could finish his words, he shook his hands hastily. Wait, these seem too crude. Send someone to stand guard at the Master-Teacher Pavilion, and as soon as Zhang Shi appears, inform me. I want to greet him personally. Greet him personally. Your Majesty, the officials were taken aback by the Emperor's words. Regardless of the situation, he was the Emperor of a Tier 1 kingdom. To personally pay respects to a youngster who wasn't even 20 yet, wasn't this making a big fuss out of nothing? Say no more, I have made up my mind. The middle-aged man harumphed. Even though this Zhang Xian hadn't passed the 2-star master-teacher examination yet, given his potential, it was only a matter of time before he reached 3-star or even higher. Such a figure would be a strong existence who wielded the power to reign supreme no matter where he goes. Therefore, despite him being an emperor, he didn't dare to be impolite to him. Yes. The crowd could only nod in agreement. With such splendid results, he would surely pass the 2-star master-teacher examination. Help me prepare a luxurious gift. Send it over to Zhang Shi as soon as he appears. In a luxurious residence in the capital, a middle-aged man, too, caught wind of the news and quickly instructed. Seconds later, he slammed on the table and added, No, I will send the gift over myself. Yes. The guard before him nodded. Right, have you found the young master yet? After issuing his instructions, the middle-aged man asked. Reporting to the old master, we had found the young master. Someone had stripped him naked and hung him on a tree outside the city. The guard hesitated for a moment before clasping his fist and reporting on the matter. What? Someone dared to strip my son bare and hang him on a tree. Who is it? He is courting death. With a steeled face, the middle-aged man's face turned crimson and looked as though he was about to burst into flames. For the son of the clan head of one of the 3 great clans of the capital to be humiliated like that, the person was disregarding the prestige of their Ji clan and challenging their authority. Young master didn't speak of it, so I don't know. Frightened by the clan head's sudden outburst, the guard bowed fearfully in haste. Bring him to me. The middle-aged man waved his hand. Yes. The guard hurried out. Soon, a young man with a swollen red face walked in. If Zhang Xian was here, he would surely recognize the other party. He was the 1-star painter who had challenged him, GMO Gongzi. However, the current GMO was stripped of his carefree and dashing look. His body, covered with red swells, was only covered by a thin layer of clothes, draped over him. If he were to claim that he had just returned from begging for food on the streets, people would definitely believe him. Father, you have to exact revenge for me. Upon entering, tears immediately streamed down GMO Gongzi's face. Kneeling on the ground, he wailed sorrowfully. Rest assured. Whoever it was who dared to challenge the authority of our Ji clan and humiliate my son, even if he is a god from the heavens, I will make sure to leave holes in him. Upon seeing the state his son was in, the middle-aged man roared furiously. A frenzied and powerful aura gushed out from him. Thank you, father, for standing up for me. Hearing his father's words, GMO Gongzi's eyes reddened. Speak, who is the one who left you in such a state? I will send my men over to tear him apart now. Waving his hands grandly, the middle-aged man displayed the majestic disposition of the clan head of one of the 3 great clans. It's those subordinates of mine. Oh, no, they aren't the mastermind. The mastermind is a fellow who had just passed the painter examination. I have no idea what he did, but he made my subordinates betray me and hang me on a tree. I want him dead, GMO Gongzi howled furiously. A painter? Humph. A mere member of the lower 9 paths occupation dares to challenge our G clan? I will find their guild leader right now and have him hand this fellow over. A furious gleam shone in the middle-aged man's eyes as he exuded a domineering aura. Our G clan has been keeping a low profile for too long that people are climbing over our heads? It's time to show them our might. Indeed, hearing father's words, GMO Gongzi suddenly felt a gush of hot blood stream through his body. The excitement left his eyes red once more. It had been long since the G clan made a move in public and many people had already forgotten about its existence. It was time to let them know that G clan was still a huge existence in Tianwu Royal City. No matter how powerful the Painter Guild was, it was just an occupation of the lower 9 paths. What could they do to them? Right, what's the name of the person who did you in? The middle-aged man asked. Reporting to father, that person is called Zhang Xian. Despite having just passed the painter examination, he dares to call himself a genius. GMO Gongzi's eyes turned red. Wait until I get my hands on him. I will show him what does suffering worse than death feels like. However, as he was howling ferociously, he suddenly felt that something was amiss. The room was too quiet. Turning around, he saw his father who was still shouting passionately a moment ago stare at him with widened eyes. Father, what's wrong? He was perplexed. Before he could finish his words, a gigantic foot came flying at him. The middle-aged man roared. What's wrong your head? You profligate son, why don't you die outside, Peng? Before GMO Gongzi could react, he was already sent flying. Men, tie this beast up. Present him to Zhang Shi as an apology. The middle-aged man's lips quivered. Apology? The corners of GMO Gongzi's mouth twitched. His vision turned dark and unable to hold himself back, he cried. Didn't you say that you would exact revenge for me? Didn't you say that you would show them the might of the G clan? What did kicking me and apologize mean? Can anyone tell me what in the world is going on? After half a day and an entire night of effort, Zhang Xian finally managed to duplicate all of the books in the 1-star library of the Master Teacher Pavilion into the Library of Heaven's Path. Zhang Xian was in a state of extreme fatigue. He had expended his mental strength too vigorously. Despite his soul depth reaching 10.1, he still found himself on the brink of collapsing. He had to rest on the spot for an hour before his fatigue alleviated. Browsing through the Library of Heaven's Path, Zhang Xian frowned. To think that there isn't any information on Empyrean Kong Shi nor any Zongshi realm cultivation technique manuals, these were the two main purposes for Zhang Xian's visit to the library. Yet he didn't accomplish a single one of them. It must be because 1-star master teachers didn't have the right to come into contact with a figure of Kong Shi's level yet. As for cultivation technique, 1-star master teachers mainly possesses Tongxian realm cultivation. Half-Zongshi and Zongshi realm cultivation technique manuals are useless to them. After a short while of pondering, Zhang Xian shook his head. Seemed like he was expecting too much. 1-star master teachers stood at the very bottom of the master teacher occupation, so it was natural that many secrets were out of their reach. After all, Kong Shi was known as the greatest teacher in the world, the leader of all master teachers. How could the background of such an incredible figure be placed casually in such a place for the browsing of others? Even if there were such books, it would only record his general details. It was impossible for the matter regarding innate fetal poison to be recorded in it. Forget it. Even if I don't have any Zongshi realm cultivation technique secret manuals, there are still quite a number of Tongxian realm and half-Zongshi realm cultivation technique secret manuals. I can modify them slightly and pass them to Xiaoye and the others to cultivate. While there were no Zongshi realm cultivation technique secret manuals, there were thousands of manuals on the other cultivation realm. As long as he was given sufficient time to arrange the information, he would surely be able to create a set of cultivation techniques suited for Xiaoye and the others to cultivate. After which, Zhang Xian turned his focus onto the books on master teachers. After a brief look, Zhang Xian finally understood why master teachers were able to stand at the zenith of all occupations. Seeing through flaws and weaknesses in one's cultivation technique weren't abilities that a master teacher was born with. It was developed through continuous hard work and study. According to the books, there were several 100,000 of methods to determine whether there was a problem in a person's cultivation technique. Similar to how a physician diagnosed his patients, there was a need for master teachers to know of all these to peer into what others couldn't see and solve the problem. Due to the high difficulty level of the occupation, they were granted utmost respect. I should study them in the next 10 days. While Zhang Xian had assumed the status of a master teacher and solved many problems, he mainly relied on his library of Heaven's Path to do so. In truth, he didn't know much about the techniques a master teacher used. Thus, it would be good to use the next 10 days to learn more about master teacher as an occupation and augment his knowledge, so that he could be more fitting of his position as a 2-star master teacher. After glancing through the books on master teachers, he proceeded to scan through the various other genres as well. Even though there were many types of books in the master teacher pavilion, they were mainly focused on the common occupations. There were very few books on the sidelined occupations such as poison master. Seemed like the master teacher pavilion wasn't omnipotent. Despite master teachers possessing the state of insight, allowing them to learn and memorize things better than the average cultivator, it was impossible to them to be adept on every single occupation in the world. While there aren't many books on the other occupations, there are quite a few of them on blacksmiths here. His eyes fell on a pile of books. There were books regarding equipment forging and they added up to several 10,000s. Zhang Xian could be said to be completely ignorant to the field of smithing. There was a blacksmith guild in Tianxian Kingdom, but he hadn't been there, so naturally, he hadn't read any books on it. All equipment can be divided into 5 levels: God, Saint, Spirit, Phantom, and Mortal. Each of these levels can be split further down to 4 tiers: low tier, intermediate tier, high tier, and pinnacle. Casually flipping open the book, Zhang Xian read through the introduction. Cultivators of the 9 Dawn of a Fighter would usually use only mortal and phantom equipment. On the other hand, only blacksmiths of 4-star and above are capable of forging spirit equipment. Zhang Xian swiftly browsed through the book. I didn't know that there are so many levels for equipment. He had seen the puppet in the master teacher pavilion, and he was perplexed over it as it was unlike any other equipment he had seen before. However, at this moment, he finally realized that it was a spirit equipment. Spirit equipment meant that the equipment possessed a soul. For example, if there was a sword soul within a saber, it would be considered as a spirit equipment. The strength of this kind of equipment far surpasses that of any ordinary weapons. However, due to their prohibitive value, there might not be more than a handful of them in the entire Tianwu kingdom. This isn't just applicable for equipment. Even cultivation techniques and battle techniques have different levels as well. After browsing through the books on equipment, he was reminded of the book he just read about cultivation techniques. Cultivation techniques were also divided into 5 levels: God, Saint, Spirit, Phantom and Mortal, and they were divided into 4 tiers as well: low tier, intermediate tier, high tier, and pinnacle. For example, the Hengtian 9 Dan formula of the Hengtian Academy was only a low-tier mortal cultivation technique. Most of the cultivation techniques of the Tianxian Kingdom royal family were only at intermediate tier mortal as well. Due to the low level of these cultivation techniques, the speed of cultivation would be slow, and the purity of the zhenqi would be poor as well. As Tianxian Kingdom didn't possess higher level cultivation techniques, the differentiation between the tiers wasn't apparent. Only after reading through these books did Zhang Xian gain enlightenment on this issue. I wonder what level the Heaven's Path Divine Art is at. Knowing that the cultivation techniques he had encountered in the past were lacking, Zhang Xian suddenly thought about the Heaven's Path Divine Art which he was cultivating. This Heaven's Path Divine Art was formed through the compilation of the correct cultivation method contained in innumerable books by the Library of Heaven's Path. Regardless of whether it was his cultivation speed or the quality of his zhenqi, it was far superior to that of any ordinary cultivation technique. Even though Zhang Xian wasn't too sure what level it was probably at minimum saint level, or perhaps even god level. It was because of this incredible cultivation technique that allowed him to cultivate the incomparably pure heaven's path Shinchi, allowing him to easily clear up blocked meridians. Alright, since I've already duplicated these books in the library of heaven's path, I can slowly browse through them later on. It's getting late now, I should make my way to Tianwu Academy. Glancing outside, the night had already passed, and the sun had risen. Stretching his back, Zhang Xian walked out with widened strides. His priority now was to pass the final test of the 2-star Master Teacher examination. He could take his time to browse through those books later on. Zhang Shi, the public recruitment exercise of Tianwu Academy is about to start. Let's hurry. The moment he stepped out of the library, he was approached by Mo Hongyi. The Mo Hongyi at this moment looked like a completely different person. Around 26 to 27-year-old, his face was slightly ashen. There was a stark difference between his original cold but dashing face. Alright. Knowing that it would be hard to get into Tianwu Academy once he missed the public recruitment today, Zhang Xian nodded. After stepping out of the Master Teacher Pavilion, they walked along the streets for an hour before a majestic campus appeared before their eyes. Built against the mountain and encompassed by a river, the academy was vast and grand. Countless students walked to and fro the gates, and the harmonious reciting could be heard. It had a tranquil and peaceful atmosphere. In comparison to this academy, Hongtian Academy seemed no different from a countryside academy. The duo stopped before the gates. They had arrived at Tianwu Academy. Chapter 318, Hell Mode. Doesn't the academy usually only recruit new teachers at the start of the term? For a public recruitment to be conducted now, is it an intentional action of the Master Teacher Pavilion? Upon entering the academy, Zhang Xian saw innumerable passionate students studying and training peacefully on the campus. Seemingly influenced by the environment, he suddenly felt relaxed. Turning to Mo Hongyi, he asked. Most academies accept students at the start or the end of the term so that when new students arrive, they would get to choose among the teachers. Judging from the current point in time, it had already been 2 months since the start of the term. If they were to accept teachers now, who would they teach? Were the other teachers expected to donate students to them? This didn't seem practical. Probably, only the Master Teacher Pavilion wielded such influence. That's not it. Mo Hongyi shook his head. Some teachers of the academy have left for some unknown reasons, resulting in vacancies for their classes. Thus, they decided to recruit new teachers to take charge of these classes so as to not delay their lessons. Vacancies for their classes? You mean that once hired, will take over their classes? It's not a school-wide student and teacher selection exercise? Zhang Xian was taken aback. Taking a class straight and having a student choose you were 2 different concepts. Taking a class meant that everything was already decided beforehand, and one had no choice even if one was displeased with the students. As for the latter, one was allowed to choose freely and take in students of one's liking. Student and teacher selection exercise? How can that be possible? It is not the start of the term, so there's no student for you to choose. Besides, given our current identity, it is unlikely that students will choose us either. Mo Hongyi rolled his eyes. Knowing that it was impossible for him to surpass this monster before him, he no longer viewed his hostilely. As such, his attitude became much more amiable than before. He wouldn't live up to his reputation as a genius if he couldn't even adjust his state of mind. That's true, Zhang Xian scratched his head. He was currently in disguise as a person named Lu Cheng. He didn't have a striking reputation and didn't have any impressive qualifications either. Even if it was at the start of the year, it was unlikely that any students would want to come under his tutelage. But even so, this was already a much higher starting point as compared to his experience in Hongtian Academy. Back then, he had to shoulder the notoriety as the worst teacher in the academy. In any case, he still managed to accept a few outstanding students. How are the grades divided in Tianwu Academy? After pondering for a moment, Zhang Xian asked. You don't even know that? Mo Hongyi looked at Zhang Xian as though he had lived under a rock all this time. At times, this fellow seemed so monstrous that it made others despair. Other times, he seemed so innocent and pure, knowing nothing at all, as though a newborn infant. Tianwu Academy was the kingdom's #1 academy. All of the teachers know about it, so how could a master teacher like you not know such elementary knowledge? To enter Tianwu Academy, one's cultivation must at least be at Fighter 3 Danjinqi realm. There are a total of 4 grades, and they correspond to Jinqi, Pigu, Dingli, and Pixue respectively. Upon reaching Pixue realm, one can apply for graduation. After hesitating for a moment, Mo Hongyi continued explaining. Teachers are allowed to accept new students every year. As such, most teachers will have students of all 4 grades. Zhang Xian nodded. These rules were similar to those of Hengtian Academy. If his previous self hadn't caused his students' cultivation to go berserk, Zhang Xian would have had old students as well. We're here. Just as Zhang Xian was musing over this matter, Mo Hongyi's voice sounded. Lifting his head, he realized he had arrived right before Tianwu Academy Elder Hall. New teachers had to be approved by the elders to be recruited. An entire row of around a dozen elders was seated in the center of the courtyard. The weakest of them was at half Zongshi while the strongest one had reached Zongshi realm pinnacle. The one sitting at the center is Principal Xiabai, one of the top 10 experts of our Tianwu kingdom. He is a 1-star master teacher and is extremely famous in our kingdom. Even I would find it hard to defeat him in a duel. Mo Hongyi discreetly pointed across and sent a telepathic message to Zhang Xian. His finger was pointed toward a white-bearded old man seated at the very center of the row. His eyes were large like a ferocious tiger. Even though he wasn't young, it didn't seem his vigor had declined in the least. On the contrary, he exuded a spirited and powerful aura. This was a Zongshi realm pinnacle expert. However, Zhang Xian didn't see him in MOU's question symposium yesterday. Standing before the white-bearded elder was a row of people lined up in order, the numbers seeming to exceed 100. If you too are here for the teacher interview, please write down your personal details here and line up over there. Upon entering, a student immediately walked up to them. The both of them walked in and filled up a form. The content was simple. They only had to fill up their name, gender, cultivation, and their qualifications as a teacher. They had memorized the background of the person they were impersonating yesterday, so it didn't take them long to fill the form up. May I ask if everyone here is for the teacher interview? After passing the form over, Zhang Xian pointed to the 100 people lining up and asked. That's right. The student nodded. So many people. Zhang Xian was astonished. Then how many teachers is Tianwu Academy recruiting? If they were recruiting a sizable amount, it shouldn't be a problem for Zhang Xian and Mo Hongyi to get in. Otherwise, they would have to fight with the others for the placing. Oh. We are accepting a total of 5 teachers. 3 had already passed the interview, so there are only 2 slots remaining. The student said. Only 2 slots remaining. Zhang Xian and Mo Hongyi glanced at one another. Over 100 teachers were competing for 2 slots. Wasn't the test supposed to be on increasing the trust level of the students we accept? Why did it suddenly become a recruitment test instead? If we were to fail the interview, does that count as an immediate failure? Yes. The student nodded. Aren't these teachers still queuing up? Why had 3 of them passed already? What are the prerequisites for the recruitment of these teachers? Zhang Xian continued asking. The others were still queuing, but 3 of them had passed already. Shouldn't they go through everyone before choosing carefully? Oh, the principal looked over their interview, and after determining that they are suitable, he immediately brought them in. Those 3 who were accepted are half-Zongshi experts, so they are more than qualified to become teachers. The student smiled. Half-Zongshi? Zhang Xian and Mo Hongyi smiled bitterly. With that level of cultivation, one was already qualified to become an elder at Tianwu Academy. It wasn't surprising that they would be accepted immediately. On the other hand, the Lu Cheng whom Zhang Xian was impersonating as only possessed a cultivation of Tongxian realm primary stage, which was significantly much weaker than them. A half-Zongshi cultivator against a Tongxian realm primary stage cultivator, no matter how foolish one was, it was clear which one would be chosen. The person Mo Hongyi was impersonating also only possessed a cultivation of Tongxian realm primary stage. Thus, they were both on the same starting line. Initially, Zhang Xian thought that once he became a teacher, he just had to lead a few students so it wouldn't be too difficult. He didn't expect to be thrown into a hard mode stage which one might die even before seeing the dungeon. One of them was the number 1 genius of Tianwu Kingdom while the other one was a rising star who broke numerous records of the Master Teacher Pavilion for the 2-star Master Teacher examination. They actually had to compete with a bunch of normal teachers. Just the thought in itself felt bizarre. Alright, you two should queue up as well. If you meet the criteria, the academy will pick you. The student urged them on. Nodding, Zhang Xian and Mo Hongyi proceeded forward. You two are here for the interview as well? Tongxian realm primary stage, I think the both of you should just leave. Even the worst of the lot here have reached Tongxian realm intermediate stage. The moment they walked over, a young man turned to look at them disdainfully. At the same time, he revealed his cultivation. Tongxian realm advanced stage. Due to the disguise, they had to suppress their cultivation to be visibly at Tongxian realm primary stage. Otherwise, given how pure Zhang Xian's Heaven's Path Xinqi was, even Pavilion Master Jiang would be unable to discern his cultivation realm. Needless to say, this fellow. The ability to impart knowledge is the most important ability of a teacher. If a teacher is incapable of doing so, what's the use of having a high cultivation? Mo Hongyi harumphed. As a top-notch genius, he had been admired by others from young. Other than suffering a setback inflicted by Zhang Xian, he had never been underestimated before. Yet, this fellow spoke such words to him the moment they met. Mo Hongyi's blood boiled with anger. Despite your young age, you sure have a fiery temper. The young man harumphed, I am saying these words for your welfare. I'm afraid that you will just waste your time. After which, he turned around haughtily. Disregarded by the other party, Mo Hongyi's face turned pale. On the other hand, Zhang Xian chuckled. To be able to send the number 1 genius into a fit of anger, that person could also be considered a talent. Just as he was about to say something, the voice of an elder sounded from the front. Xia Bai, thank the teachers here for attending this public recruitment. Everyone immediately fell silent upon hearing the principal's voice and focused their attention on the front. I believe everyone here had heard about the shortage of teachers in the academy. Since all of you are here for the recruitment, I believe all of you are informed of the situation of the classes in question. Principal Xiaobai surveyed the surroundings. However, I should still say a few things about these 2 classes in advance. Their previous teachers were Hui Laoshe and Baifang Laoshe. Thus, the students of these classes are outstanding. I hope to recruit a worthy teacher so that their talents don't go to waste. Hu Yi and Baifang. Upon hearing those names, Mo Hongyi frowned. You know them? Zhang Xian turned to look at Mo Hongyi. They are famous star teachers in Tianwu Academy and their teaching skills are outstanding. Furthermore, they are Pavilion Master Zhang's apprentices. Mo Hongyi told him through telepathy. Pavilion Master Zhang's apprentice. To be capable of becoming the apprentice of a 2-star pinnacle master teacher, it was impossible for their teaching skills to be mediocre. That's right. I've heard that their classes are the 2 most outstanding classes in the entire Tianwu Academy. The students they accept are also top-notch. Seems like our test isn't as easy as we thought. Mo Hongyi rubbed his glabella. An outstanding student had a tendency to be complacent and as a result, they often would feel less attached to a teacher. It was just like if one taught a genius and a normal student. Assuming that you helped the both of them advance from Jinshi realm to Dingli realm, the latter would be thankful to you while the former might think that you were merely a mediocre teacher who was impeding his talent. Giving a rich man 1,000 gold coins was a completely different notion of giving a beggar 1,000 gold coins. Delivering charcoal in winter was a completely different concept from gifting blankets in summer. It would be hard for Zhang Xian and Mo Hongyi to win the favor of their students. These two classes were the most outstanding classes of the academy and their students were also top-notch. If one was more talented than them, one might still be able to win their respect. However, given that they had to carry out this test with their fake identity, keeping them in control was already a challenge. Needless to say, winning their trust, how could those geniuses be willing to submit to two average teachers? The heck? Zhang Xian had thought it would be a piece of a cake. He had thought that what was required of him was merely to come here to teach a couple of students. He had thought that the 10 days was more than enough for him to win their trust. But what he hadn't expected was that it wasn't just hard mode, but hell mode. As expected, the 2-star master teacher examination wasn't as easy as he thought. Chapter 319, Aversion towards Studying. I know that all of you present here have an extensive amount of teaching experience and are official teachers qualified by the guild. If I were to make a decision based on your resume by asking a few questions, no matter who I choose, it will be hard for all of you to accept the result. Principal Xiaobai glanced at the surroundings before continuing. Since that's the case, I'll choose based on your teaching standards. Choose based on our teaching standards. Everyone looked at Principal Xiaobai in bewilderment. That's right. A teacher is responsible for imparting knowledge and clarifying the doubts of the students. The fundamental responsibility of a teacher is to guide a student onto the right path so that he will be able to reach greater heights. I have 2 students here and each of them are facing some problems. The academy will recruit whoever who manages to solve their problems. If 2 people were to solve their problem, the one who does it better will have the priority. Principal Xiaobai said. The fundamental responsibility of a teacher is to teach. If one is inept in teaching, then it is useless even if he is proficient in everything else. No matter how high a person's cultivation is, if he is unable to verbalize it, he will still be an inept teacher. Upon hearing the selection criteria, the crowd nodded their heads. This kind of test is indeed fitting for a teacher interview. A satisfied expression appeared on Mo Hongyi's face. There were different types of expertise required for different occupations. Without the experience of teaching students and comprehension of teaching theories, no matter how high one's cultivation may be, it would be difficult for them to impart their insights to their students. Many scholars who stood at the top of their fields had conducted lessons. Although they were able to go on and on, at the end of the lesson the students ended up learning nothing at all. Bring them in. Principal Xiaobai shouted and 2 15 to 16-year-old students were brought in. A male and a female. The female had a cold and haughty expression whereas the male had sharp eyes reminiscent of an eagle. Despite standing before a huge crowd, there wasn't any sign of fear present in the 2 students' eyes. Seeming to know the reason why they were here, they remained extremely quiet. These are the 2 students. Who wants to take a look first? Xiaobai surveyed the crowd. Me. The young man standing in front of Zhang Xian and Mo Hongyi shouted and stepped forward haughtily. Not bad. A teacher should have this kind of adventurous attitude. It is impossible to bring up good students by cowering fearfully. Xiaobai nodded his head in satisfaction. Upon hearing those words, a wave of regret struck the crowd. If only they knew that was the case, they would have definitely rushed up. That fellow had managed to win himself some brownie points from Principal Xie. If things go well, he might even pass the examination. Having been complimented, the young man's eyes lit up brightly. He strode up to the 2 students and circled around them before instructing, "Show me your battle techniques." Yes. With a casual expression, the female student began first. Her movements were exceptionally precise, forceful and nimble, hinting of superior talent. Soon, she finished displaying her battle technique. After which, the male student took her place to demonstrate his. His movements weren't as nimble as the former, but they were straightforward, swift, and was executed with overwhelming strength. In fact, one could sense a slight killing intent behind his actions. While the duo was executing their battle techniques, the other candidates looked on intently by the side and contemplated silently over the matter. It wasn't long before the both of them finished demonstrating their battle techniques. Clasping their fist, they bowed and went back to standing upright. "All right, you can give your evaluation now." Xiaobai gestured. "All right." The young man replied. Placing his hands behind his back, he explained haughtily, the battle technique that this lady executed was, clear water fleeting cloud hands, that prided itself on its nimble and smooth movements. Although her demonstration of the movements exuded elegance and also displayed her solid foundation in that technique, she is lacking in jinqi. When she was moving about, her movements seemed slightly strained. If I'm not wrong, it hadn't been long since she attained the jinqi realm. As such, she isn't too adept with the utilization of jinqi. After which, he turned to the female student and asked, "May I know if I am right? I just reached jinqi realm 3 months ago." The female student nodded. It is clear that she had trained hard to perfect the battle technique. Her movements are skilled, beautiful and precise, but due to her lack of jinqi, they are just empty movements. If she is my student, I will ask her to immerse herself in her cultivation and try her best to gather jinqi first. Only after her jinqi fills up will she be able to execute the full might of the techniques. The young man smiled. She has an elegant, refined figure and a pure aura, so I will recommend her to cultivate the Academy's Lucid Jade technique. It is in line with her disposition, so it should be easy for her to cultivate it. The technique I am cultivating is Lucid Jade technique. Hearing his words, the female student said in surprise. Hee hee. Gleeful, the young man then turned to the male student. You possess great brute might. As such, you have good affinity with strength-based cultivation technique and battle technique. I think that, searing bamboo art, is the most suitable for you. Teacher, the cultivation technique I am currently training with is searing bamboo art. The male student nodded his head. All right, I'm done with my evaluation. Flinging his sleeves, the young man walked back to the crowd with a gleeful expression. When he returned to his original position and saw Zhang Xian and Mo Hongyi, he intentionally tilted his head upward haughtily. I have also seen through all of that. I should have volunteered myself earlier. Indeed. He got the opportunity to step up first. If I were to go up now, it would just look forced and this will just look bad on me. Damn it. Hearing the young man's words, the crowd felt regretful. As official teachers who passed the examination, they were able to see this much. However, since someone else had already spoken for them, others would just suspect one to be copying his words if one were to come up with a similar analysis, and that would look bad on one. Contrary to the others' expressions, Principal Xueqing seemed to be indifferent to the situation, and a sliver of disappointment even flashed across his face. Surveying the crowd, he continued, Is there anyone who wants to add on? Allow me. After hesitating for a moment, another man walked up. It was a middle-aged man in his 40s. It is Tianquan Academy's Du Sun Laoshi. I heard that he is a star teacher and is already accepted as an apprentice by a master teacher. Indeed. I've attended his lessons before. He is truly incredible. Seems like we will lose another slot. A commotion burst out as soon as the middle-aged man walked out. Everyone couldn't help but feel tense. He didn't stand out much from the crowd. However, the moment he walked out, quite a handful of people immediately recognized him. To be able to become a star teacher and a master teacher apprentice, he was bound to possess capability that surpassed others. Moreover, those who answered the public recruitment were mostly ordinary teachers, so there was a huge gap between them and him. I have seen the battle techniques they executed and I can also tell that the movements of this female student here are nimble. The teacher before is right to say that she is suited to cultivate lucid jade technique. However, he neglected a point. This female student has only reached Jinqi realm for 3 months, yet she was able to master such a powerful battle technique. Given how she is able to complement her body and Jinqi so well, this shows that she is talented and that she possesses aptitude far surpassing the others. In other words, she is a genius. Du-sun Laoshi walked up to the duo, examined them for a moment before giving his evaluation. The lucid jade technique can only be considered an ordinary cultivation technique for the ladies. If one's talent is mediocre, there is no problem cultivating it. However, given her high aptitude, cultivating such a technique is a waste. I think that it will be better if she cultivates maiden method instead. As for this male student, his movements are forceful. Indeed, strength-based techniques such as searing bamboo art are more suitable for him. However, his moves are direct, sharp and pointed straight toward one's vitals. This shows that he has outstanding battle experience. While searing bamboo art is still acceptable in terms of raising one's cultivation, it causes one's Jinqi to move slowly. For someone like him who is skilled in the offense, it isn't the best skill for him to learn. I think that it will be more suitable for him to cultivate domineering heaven's might instead. This cultivation technique allows one's Jinqi to burst at short intervals, and this better augments his strengths. At which, Du-sun Laoshi clasped his fists and said, "I'm done." Good. After hearing his words, Xiaobai nodded his head in satisfaction. When the other young man before him spoke, he flashed a look of disappointment. On the other hand, he actually complimented Du-sun. It was clear that he regarded Du-sun higher than the young man before. Damn it! Taking the other party's expression into sight, the young man's gleeful face darkened and he clenched his fists tightly. As expected of an expert. There was nothing wrong with the young man's analysis, but compared to Du-sun, it was clear that he was lacking. He could tell that Du-sun's solution was at a much higher level than his. Alright, is there anyone who wants to add on? Xiaobai glanced at the crowd once more. A few more people walked up, but what they spoke of was mostly similar to that of the first 2 teachers, demonstrating a lack of novelty in their words. If no one has anything else to add on, the slots will be given to the first 2 teachers. With a slightly disappointed expression, Xiaobai said. Allow me. Mo Hongyi walked up. Surprised that someone would still volunteer himself when there was already nothing to be said, everyone's gazes immediately gathered toward the source of the voice. However, when they saw his cultivation realm, they immediately shook their heads in disappointment. Many Tongxian realm advanced stage and pinnacle teachers had spoken, but they weren't able to come up with anything new. How could a mere Tongxian realm primary stage be more insightful than them? Even Xiaobai and the other elders didn't have much hope in him. Even though cultivation didn't necessarily relate to one's teaching abilities, there were still some links between them. The higher one's cultivation, the deeper the understanding of cultivation one has, the more knowledge one could impart to one's students. Ignoring everyone's gazes, Mo Hongyi walked up to the 2 students, examined them carefully before turning to the principal. Principal, if I'm not wrong, the problem you spoke of earlier wasn't referring to their cultivation, but something else. Something else? What can a teacher teach other than cultivation? Ridiculous. Don't spout nonsense if you know nothing at all. Hearing his words, the faces of the other teachers darkened. The young man who spoke up first earlier looked at him disdainfully. What else could the students' problems be other than their cultivation? Their background? Oh. Tell me about it. The disappointed Principal Xiaobai abruptly raised his head up. Regardless of whether this female student cultivates the lucid jade technique or maiden method, there isn't too much of a difference. Just like what Du-sun Laoshi said, she possesses great talent, so the difference in cultivation technique won't affect her too much. Mo Hongyi glanced at the female student. Besides, even if the lucid jade technique is slightly weaker, she has already cultivated it for many years and is already familiar with it. Changing it abruptly will just impede her progress. Besides, As long as she is given proper guidance, there isn't too much of a difference between the two cultivation techniques. Thus, in my opinion, her greatest problem isn't her cultivation technique or the need to reinforce her Jinshi realm cultivation. It is instead her aversion to studying. Aversion to studying? Principal Xie's eyes lit up and he hurriedly turned to look at Imo Hongi. That's right, continue on. This, hearing the principal admit to the matter, everyone widened their eyes. Aversion to studying? What the heck? How in the world can one tell such a matter? Since she has an aversion towards studying, we have to look for a way to invoke her interest in cultivating. On the other hand, since the male student faces the threat of expulsion, we just have to suppress his urge to fight with other students. However, this isn't something that can be accomplished in a day or two. It requires continuous hard work over a period of time. Mo Hongi said. Good, you've been recruited. Principal Xia and many other elders nodded their heads. To be capable of seeing through the problem in the student's attitude through their battle techniques bore testimony to his eye of discernment. A teacher had to first find the root of a problem before he could deal with them specifically. If they didn't recruit such a talent, who else would they recruit? Is there anyone who still has anything to say? If so, then the ones recruited for this selection exercise will be this Xueqing Laosher and Du Sun Laosher. Principal Xia gestured as he confirmed the names. Xueqing was the name of the identity Mo Hongi was impersonating as. I don't have any objections. There is nothing more we can say, so we might as well not humiliate ourselves. Even though the other teachers felt reluctant to give up, it was true that the analysis of the two were the best. They had no choice but to give up. They weren't able to value add to their answers anymore, so there was no point in saying anything else. Good. Then I announced the ones who have passed this selection exercise to be. Just as Principal Xia was about to declare his decision, a voice interjected, wait a moment. Why don't I say something as well? After which, the young man who came with Xueqing Laosher walked up. Zhang Xian. He would have failed the examination if he were to remain silent. Thus, he had no choice but to step up. Seeing him walk over, Mo Hongi chuckled. He had already said all that he could see, making it impossible for Zhang Xian to say anything else. Yet, to change the other party's attitude with just a few words, he, too, wanted to know what kind of words it was that possessed such magical powers. She does have an aversion towards studying, but it isn't because of her disinterest. It is because of her physical condition. Zhang Xian smiled. I saw through her problem and promised her that I will solve it for her, so naturally, she is willing to study under me. The reason why this female student was averse to studying was that of a physical condition. Every time she tried to cultivate, an intense pain would torture her entire body. It is natural that no one would be willing to suffer pain willingly, so eventually, she became averse towards the idea of cultivating that culminated into her disinterest. Given that Zhang Xian was able to see through her condition and even promised to solve it for her, it wasn't surprising for the female student to bow down to him immediately. That's simple. If she has a physical condition, why didn't she mention it before? Why did she keep it to herself? Another doubt flashed through everyone's mind. If she had incurred a problem in her cultivation, she could have discussed it with her teacher. Yet, this female student had never brought the matter up before. This is a matter regarding her privacy, so how could she be willing to speak of it? Zhang Xian shook his head. The other party's condition was similar to Zhao Ye's affliction, making it difficult for her to speak of it. Naturally, she found it hard to raise the subject to her teacher. If that's the case, then I won't ask any further. Even though he was curious, Principal Xia knew that it would be inappropriate for Zhang Xian to divulge the other party's private condition, thus he chose not to ask any further. Instead, he turned to the male student and said, what about his problem? If you can make him promise not to fight with other students anymore, we will take it as you have passed this selection exercise and the academy will recruit you as an official teacher. All right. Chapter 321, You have been recruited, done. Zhang Xian clapped his hands with glee. Seeing how casual the other party was, everyone suddenly felt dizzy and an urge to spew blood welled in them. Wasn't he being too eccentric? The teacher guild had explicitly stated that one was not to punish a student physically, yet you had the cheek to beat the other party up so severely. If the teacher guild were to pursue the matter, no one would be able to shoulder the responsibility. Lu Laoshi, Mo Hongyi was speechless. He nearly fainted from anger. Teachers aren't allowed to beat students up. Is this fellow for real? It is one thing for you not to know the rules of the master-teacher examination, but you would have at least taken a class before, you would have at least taught some students before as a 2-star master-teacher examinee. How could you not know these fundamental rules? A teacher was supposed to win over his students by virtue. If the teacher guild were to realize that one had punished a student physically, it is very likely that one's teaching license would be revoked. Beat students up. Who said that I had beaten a student? Zhang Xian glared at the male student. Did I beat you up? No. I am indebted to teacher. You did it to save me, you did not beat me up. The male student quickly kowtowed as he explained through his now incomplete set of teeth. The crowd was thrown into a frenzy. Brother, can you be any more arrogant? Do you think that we are all blind? All of us personally saw you beat the other party up. It is one thing for you not to admit it, but you even threatened the student. This is truly atrocious and deplorable. They had seen ridiculous people, but they had never seen someone who left them so speechless. Humph. Flinging his hands, Principal Xie's face steeled. As the principal and a 1-star master teacher, a teacher had beaten up and threatened a student before him. He couldn't simply remain motionless to this matter. Lu Laoshi, punishing a student physically is already a violation of the responsibilities of a teacher. I will report this matter to the teacher guild, so you should prepare yourself for the sanction from the guild. Also, our Tianwu Academy is unwilling to recruit a deplorable and irresponsible teacher like you, so please leave immediately. After which, he pointed to the doors. Sanction. Irresponsible. Zhang Xian was taken aback. He turned to Principal Xia and asked, Is this your judgment on the matter? That's right. Principal Xia harumphed. Fine. Zhang Xian shook his head. Given your eye of discernment, you still call yourself a 1-star master teacher? Honestly speaking, I would really like to ask, are you blind? Pooh. Did this fellow just insult Principal Xie? The heck? He physically punished a student and insulted a 1-star master teacher. Is this fellow insane? The other teachers' eyeballs were about to pop out from their sockets. This is the principal of Tianwu Academy, a Zhongshe realm pinnacle expert. In terms of strength, he is ranked in the top 10 of the academy. Not to mention, he is a 1-star master teacher as well. To say that he is blind, the heck. They had only thought that he was arrogant a moment ago, but now, they realized that he was insane. Otherwise, how could a teacher who came for a public recruitment beat up a student in public and insult a 1-star master teacher? Master teachers were not to be sullied. Just this crime was sufficient to have him killed. The corners of Mo Hongyi's mouth twitched as well. However, he knew that even though Zhang Xian had an eccentric personality and a vile mouth, he had the capability to back it up. Based on his understanding of the latter, it was impossible for him to be insulting Principal Xia for no good reason. Re-examining the male student's condition, he suddenly froze. This, meanwhile, Principal Xia was already spurting blood. He was so furious that all of his hairs stood at its end and it felt as though he would erupt at any moment. Lu Laoshi, do you know that you are insulting a master teacher? Suppressing his rage, Principal Xia spat through gritted teeth. If not for his identity, he would have charged up and taught this arrogant fellow a lesson. Insulting a master teacher? Me? Zhang Xian looked at him with a look of pity. Someone is insulting the identity of a master teacher, but it isn't me. It is you. Infuriated, Principal Xia was just about to step forward to teach this conceited brat a lesson when the other party walked up to the male student with his hands behind his back and explained calmly. Blood calamity spider. It is a unique type of savage beast around the size of a human's thumb. It feeds on the blood of living beings and favors dark and cold habitats. It often moves around in the dark and most importantly, it carries a lethal poison on it. Everyone thought that this fellow was going to say something important, but he talked about an unrelated savage beast instead. Everyone was baffled. Principal Xia came to a halt and his eyebrows furrowed together. He wanted to see what this fellow had up his sleeves. If a cultivator were to fall prey under this spider's poison, he won't die immediately. However, the venom will numb his nerves and cause a change in his personality. He will become violent and an urge to battle with others would overwhelm him. This is because only battle could alleviate the boiling poison in his body and bring him peace. Zhang Xian continued. There is actually such a savage beast. Is there really such a peculiar poison in the world? Upon hearing the effects of the poison of the blood calamity spider, a conjecture appeared in everyone's mind. However, they didn't dare to confirm it. Rather, their gaze remained fixated on the young man before them. That's right, this male student had fallen prey to this poison and it was already at an extremely severe stage. Thus, he couldn't help but fight with others to alleviate his raging emotions. Did you all realize that even though the movements of his battle techniques were sharp and lethal, there was a trace of redness in his eyes? No matter how many battles a cultivator undergoes, it isn't possible for their fights to affect their mental state and change the color of their eyes. Zhang Xian surveyed the surroundings. Trace of redness, I noticed it too, but I thought that it was because of his agitation. That's right, I saw it too. I thought that it was because of his unique battle technique. Could it really be because of a lethal poison? How is that possible? If he was poisoned, why couldn't any of us detect it? Recalling the sight they saw when the male student was displaying his battle technique, everyone froze. There was something bizarre about that male student's gaze, but there were some battle techniques which could change one's gaze as well. Thus, they didn't consider such a possibility. Besides, who would have known that there was a poison in the world which could affect a person's mental state and make them aggressive? I wasn't beating him up just now. I was using a unique method to force the poison out of his body. If you don't believe me, you can look at the blood on the floor. Zhang Xian casually pointed. Following his finger, the crowd saw the blood that flowed out from the apertures of the male student when Lu Laoshi beat him up just a moment ago. To their horror, the blood was thick and black in color. The blood had curdled on the spot and the stones in contact with it corroded, causing a dent to appear. It was an extremely eerie sight. There was really lethal poison. Principal Xia's face turned pale. It was impossible for normal blood to curdle so quickly, even less so, corrode stone. Such a situation would only occur if the blood was harnessing a lethal poison. Which meant to say there was lethal poison within the male student. And Lu Laoshi wasn't beating him up just now, he was expelling his poison. Usually, one would die within 3 months of falling prey to the blood calamity spider's poison. Judging from his current state, he should only be a month in, so he isn't in any danger. That's also the reason why he was still able to suppress the poison with his cultivation, making it impossible for anyone to notice it. Zhang Xian turned to Principal Xia and said, even so, despite being the top academy in Tianwu Kingdom, how could you all not know that one of your students had fallen prey to lethal poison? It is out of kindness that I saved him, yet you framed me of beating him up and even threatened to report this to the teacher guild. You're the principal of the academy as well as a 1-star master teacher. How could you fail to see through this much? May I ask, if you aren't blind, what else could it be? Principal Xia's face paled. The black poisoned blood was an extremely clear sign that the male student had been poisoned. However, overwhelmed by rage, Principal Xia actually overlooked the matter. He even bellowed at the other party for beating the male student up. Embarrassed, his face flushed. He wanted to explain but words evaded him. Lu Laosher, please calm down. Poison master is an uncommon occupation and very few people have knowledge of it. It's normal for one not to know of it. Sensing the awkwardness of the situation, Mo Hongyi interjected. He was right. Most of the information regarding poison had been sealed by the poison hall, so most people were uninformed about the matter. Furthermore, teachers prided themselves on being righteous. As such, they rarely came into contact with something as vile as poison, so naturally, they would have very limited knowledge on them. Knowing that it was impossible for Zhang Xian to insult the other party for no good reason, he had re-examined the condition of the male student. When he saw the poison in the blood he spat, he was also thrown into a state of shock. To be able to tell that the other party had been poisoned just through his battle technique, and even saw that this meant that Zhang Xian's mastery of poison had most probably reached the level of a grandmaster. 3-star painter, 2-star beast tamer, and pill forging skills exceeding that of a 4-star apothecary. How many hidden capabilities was this fellow hiding up his sleeves? Initially, he had thought that even though the other party was superior in terms of pill forging and teaching, it would just be limited to those. However, after this incident, he realized that the other party was skilled in many other occupations as well, just that he hadn't displayed it before him. Even if you didn't know that it was lethal poison, that student had already said that I am saving him. Yet, you still chose to doubt me. Is this the discerning ability that a 1-star master teacher should have? Oblivious to Mo Hongyi's attempt to alleviate the atmosphere, Zhang Xian continued. Upon hearing those words, everyone went speechless. The male student did say that you were saving him, but you had just finished beating him up then, not to mention your ferocious glare. No matter who saw this, they would have thought that you were threatening him. Intimidated, he would have no choice but to answer that way. Who would have known that he truly meant it? It's due to my lack of observation. I am truly unworthy of the title of 1-star master teacher. Under Zhang Xian's intense interrogation, Principal Xie's face paled and he looked as though he had aged a decade. He was supposed to be the one conducting the test for the public recruitment, but little did he know that he himself had failed to notice so many crucial details. Alright, there's no need to be depressed. Just continue learning earnestly and don't come to a conclusion recklessly before clarifying the situation. Zhang Xian shook his hands casually. Everyone staggered. This was the principal of Tianwu Academy. Yet, he was being lectured as though he was a student by a mere ordinary teacher. Everyone was completely speechless, but at the same time, they were also astonished by this Lu Shi's means. Not only did he manage to locate the root of the problems of the two students, something that even Principal Xie overlooked, he was even able to treat the two of them easily. Be it his eye of discernment or his means, it was at an astounding level. If not for them witnessing this sight personally, they would have never believed it to be possible. In an instant, they were all filled with amazement and respect for this young teacher. Just when everyone's gazes were gathered on him, wanting to know how he managed to notice the lethal poison in the male student's body, Lu Shi's majestic aura suddenly dissipated. Like an expectant student waiting for his examination results, he scratched his head awkwardly and asked, "This so, will I be accepted into the academy?" Of course, you're accepted into the academy." Hearing Zhang Xian's question, Principal Xie's vision suddenly turned dark, but he hurriedly nodded his head anyway. "If you're not accepted into this academy even with such high-level capabilities, then I would really be unworthy to be the principal of the academy." Chapter 322, Mu Xueqing's Countermeasure. Mu Xueqing was a talented student of Tianwu Academy. Despite being only 18 this year, she had already reached Pixue realm with over a dozen acupoints opened up. Given her fame and the bright future laid before her, she should have been happy. Yet, she had been in low spirits recently. This was because her teacher had left the academy. Since the new teacher wasn't here yet, she was left to her own devices and was currently lazing around. Stretching her back, a beautiful curvature which could easily send any man into frenzy appeared. "Senior." At this moment, a youngster walked over. Meng Tao, what news have you uncovered? Is it reliable? Upon seeing the approaching person, Mu Xueqing immediately turned to face him with a serious expression etched on her face. I have looked into the matter, and that master teacher Zhang Xian is indeed an incredible figure. In fact, based on what I've just found out, he seems to be even more amazing than how you made him out to be. However, I heard that he is in the midst of his 2-star master teacher examination and has to leave the capital for a while. The eyes of the youngster named Meng Tao gleamed in reverence. Tell me about it. Mu Xueqing blushed. Last night, when the news of genius Mo Hongyi's records being broken reached her ears, the name of master teacher Zhang Xian was also brought to her attention. Despite being under 20, he had achieved many outstanding feats, leaving others amazed and frenzied. In fact, he was even already in the midst of taking his 2-star master teacher examination. Even though she heard it directly from an elder in her clan, she still found the matter hard to believe. After confirming the matter several times, she decided that from then onwards, Zhang Shi would be her #1 idol. Thus, when she arrived at the academy this morning, she immediately told her juniors of this matter, and the news left all of them gasping in amazement as well. The junior before her, Meng Tao, had refused to believe this matter, so she had him check for himself. I heard that when Zhang Shi arrived at the capital, he went to the Painter Guild to take the painter examination. Over there, he was met with provocation by the Ji clan's GMO Gongzi, and eventually, he used a savage beast to create a 5th-level painting, earning him the rank of a 3-star painter, Meng Tao said. Initially, he couldn't believe that someone could be more impressive than Mo Hongyi. After all, Mo Hongyi's reputation as the #1 genius of Tianwu Kingdom was already deep-rooted in the capital. However, after looking into the matter, he realized that not only was Zhang Shi more capable than Mo Hongyi, the gap between them was huge as well. Even after verifying the news personally, he still found it hard to believe. He had to pinch himself to make sure that it wasn't just a dream. Using a savage beast to paint a 5th-level painting? Mu Xueqing clenched her fists tightly. As a genius, she revered other geniuses as well. Although the name of Zhang Shi was only established the day before, the number of legendary feats he had achieved was overwhelming, leaving her with no other choice but to be awed. Say now that our teacher has left, if the academy can get Zhang Shi to be our replacement teacher, how wonderful will that be? Even though the news gathered by her junior was identical to what Mu Xueqing had heard last night, she couldn't help but feel another surge of admiration for the young master teacher. Bring him in. Senior, Zhang Shi is a figure who is going to become a 2-star master teacher. How can the academy afford to hire him? Meng Tao was speechless. There were only 3 2-star master teachers in Tianwu Kingdom, and every time they held a lecture, all teachers, including the principal, would attend it. To invite the other party over as their teacher, it was nothing more than a pipe dream. I know it as well, but I can't help but hold such expectations. I really wish that I can listen to his lecture once. Given how talented he is, his lessons must be deep and profound. Perhaps I might even achieve a breakthrough in my cultivation just by listening to one of his lessons. Mu Xueqing said with a dreamy look. Right, isn't the academy recruiting teachers today? Are the results out yet? There's not much news circulating at the moment, but from what I gathered, there is only a handful of star teachers applying for the position. The rest of them are just some ordinary teachers. I doubt they will be able to teach us anything good. Meng Tao shook his head. He didn't bear much expectations for the new teachers. That's true, Mu Xueqing nodded as well. If they were good, they would have long been brought into Tianwu Academy. They wouldn't have the need to attend the public recruitment at such a timing. Bad news, just when the two of them were discussing the matter of the new teacher, they heard an anxious voice. Then, a lady rushed in with a reddened face. Calm down, don't panic. What's wrong? Mu Xueqing frowned. Didn't I ask you to camp outside the Elder Hall to check out the accepted teachers? Why are you already back? Wait, could it be that the results are already out? Yes. Panting, the lady hurriedly nodded her head. So fast. Xueqing was taken aback. According to the news, there were over 100 teachers who attended the public recruitment today. By right, it should have taken a significant amount of time to sift through them. I saw the principal pass the identity tokens of our class over to a young teacher. After taking a few deep breaths, the lady finally managed to catch her breath and she started recounting the situation. A young teacher. That teacher seems to be in his 20s. Since I was too far away, I didn't manage to hear anything. However, I saw. Even now, the lady still found it hard to believe what she saw to be true. You are murdering us with anxiety. What did you see? Xueqing glared at her and hurriedly urged her on. I saw the teacher beating up a freshman to the point the other party was vomiting blood, the lady said. He beat up a freshman to the point the other party was vomiting blood? Xueqing and Meng Tao glanced at one another in horror. A teacher beating up a student? Such violence was unheard of in Tianwu Academy. It's true. I've seen it with my own eyes. This is what I've secretly recorded down previously, look. With a flick of her wrist, the lady produced a record crystal. Infusing Jinqi into it, two figures instantly appeared on it. Taking a closer look, a young man was beating up a student. Pang! The student spurted a mouthful of blood, and eventually, he kneeled before the young man. As the scene was recorded from a distance, they were unable to hear the conversation taking place inside the elder hall. Even so, they could clearly see the tragic state of the pummeled student. You said that the principal gave our identity tokens to this fellow? After seeing that sight, Xueqing's face turned ashen. What in the world was going on? How could they hire such an aggressive person to be their teacher? Indeed, I witnessed it myself. Furthermore, the lady uttered nervously before she pausing for a brief moment. After grabbing the tokens, he immediately started walking toward our class. He should be arriving soon. Arriving soon? Xueqing clenched her fists tightly. Doesn't the teacher guild prohibit teachers from getting physical with students? Why would the academy hire this kind of teacher? The lady shook her head. I don't know either. Senior, could it be that the academy knew that our class is uncontrollable, so they intentionally found such a teacher to teach us a lesson and beat us into submission? Meng Tao scratched his head. Beat us into submission? Let's see if he has the capability to do so. Xueqing's face darkened. Meng Tao, get everyone to stop cultivating and gather here. All right. Meng Tao nodded and hurriedly left. Soon, slightly more than a dozen students gathered around Xueqing. Senior. I believe that Meng Tao should have told you about what happened earlier. The academy has hired that vile fellow who gets physical with students on a whim to be our teacher. About this issue, what thoughts do you all have? After saying so, Xueqing glanced at the crowd. If he were to become our teacher, our lives will become a living hell. I oppose to it. However, what can we do about it? The academy has assigned him to us, and our identity tokens are already in his hands. Unless we head to the administrative office to request for a teacher switch, there's nothing we can do in this situation. Since the academy has sent him to us, it definitely won't allow us to switch to the other classes. Since it came down to this, let's think of a way to chase him away so that we can get a better teacher here. Even if we can't get a genius like Zhang Shi, we have to at least have a star teacher. If we were to come under the tutelage of an aggressive fellow like him, our future will be ruined. The crowd harumphed indignantly. Meng Tao had already explained the situation, and he had shown them the recording in the record crystal as well. Every single one of them felt infuriated upon seeing the teacher laying his hands on a student, especially since it was to the point that the student was vomiting blood. Given how brutal he was in treating his students, how could he be worthy of being a teacher? They expected them to become the students of such a person. Dream on. Alright, there's no use talking about it. Since the academy has passed our identity tokens to him, we are already his students. We have to find a way to chase him away. Xueqing raised her hand to get the others to calm down. Why don't we intentionally go against him to trip him up? Trip him up? How do you intend to do it? For example, let's refuse to follow all of his instructions. As a teacher, realizing that he is powerless in the class, he would surely leave on his own accord soon. This might be useful against others, but that fellow is an aggressive person. If we were to really disobey his instructions and he were to get physical with us, who would be able to stand against him? The group fell silent. Regardless of what plans they had, the main problem was that this new teacher was an aggressive person. If he were to lay his hands on them, given the disparity in their strength, it would be impossible for them to stand up against him. After all, even the strongest person among them, Xueqing, was only at Pixue realm. Given their strength, it was impossible for them to stand against a Tongxian realm cultivator. How about this? If he were to really lay his hands on us, let's record the scene down using a record crystal and find a way to send it to the teacher guild. I don't believe that the guild will ignore such a matter. It is a good idea, but given how that teacher dared to beat up a student before the principal, elders, and so many teachers, he must have connections there. Or perhaps he might even be backed by the academy. If we were to screw this matter up, he might make things worse for us. Indeed. If he were to know that we are plotting his downfall, won't he oppress us even further? The crowd proposed several more plans, but they were all vetoed. Given how their new teacher was able to beat up a student before so many teachers, he must have had the backing of the principal. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to act so brazenly. The idea of recording down the scene was not bad, but if it were to land in his hands before reaching the teacher guild, they would have a tough life ahead of them. They had devised a plan properly so as to solve the problem once and for all. Otherwise, once they were to alarm him, their life would just get worse. What should we do? Senior, do you have any ideas? After racking their brains, they found that they were unable to think of a feasible plan. Eventually, everyone turned their sights to Xueqing. She was the de facto leader of the class, and everyone obeyed her words. I do have an idea. Xueqing's eyes suddenly lit up. Looking at the crowd, she said, we are all students, and if we were to try to torment our teacher, once the teacher guild learns of it, we'll surely be punished. Or even worse, if the word of the matter were to spread, our reputation might fall to the gutters. The crowd nodded. In this world, teachers were an esteemed existence and students were expected to obey their teachers' commands. If it was discovered that they tried to harm their own teacher, they would definitely suffer the condemnation of the public, and their families wouldn't let them off easily as well. Then what should we do? Meng Tao asked anxiously. Since we can't do anything to our teacher, then we should still be allowed to ask questions, right? A mischievous glint appeared in Xueqing's eyes. There are quite a few students in our class who like painting, tea ceremony, formations, equipment forging, pill forging. We can ask questions about these. If he is unable to answer those questions, let's see if he still has the cheek to remain here. That's a good idea. This way, not only will we not offend him, he will also be too embarrassed to remain here. Two birds with one stone. That's a good plan. Hearing Xueqing's idea, everyone's eyes lit up. This was indeed a good plan. Not only would they not offend the other party, they could also humiliate him at the same time. Wait, he is supposed to be a teacher guiding us on our cultivation. If we were to ask about these, he could just say that he isn't adept in those occupations. If so, our plan will be foiled. One of the female students spoke up. Every teacher had their own expertise. Given Tianwu Academy's size, it was natural that they had teachers specializing in the various occupations as well. It was clear that they were up to something if they were to pose all of these questions to a single teacher. Besides, as a teacher specializing in cultivation, it wasn't embarrassing for him to be unable to answer questions on other occupations. After all, it wasn't possible for one to be adept in all occupations. I have already thought of that as well. We can just exert some pressure on him. Mu Xueqing seemed to have already thought of a countermeasure, and a hint of a smile flashed across her beautiful eyes. Exert some pressure on him. That's right. Later, when that teacher arrives, I will say that I have met with Master Teacher Zhang Xian and he has expressed the intention to accept me as his student. Mu Xueqing smiled. If that's the case, with Zhang Shi as a backing, that teacher will surely be intimidated. He probably will be hesitant to go too far, and he will be too embarrassed to admit to knowing nothing at all as well. Just that, if Zhang Shi were to realize that we had made use of his name, won't we be in trouble? A student asked hesitantly. How is that possible? Zhang Shi is an amazing genius, not to mention, he's a 2-star master teacher as well. We probably won't even get a chance to meet him in our entire life. Who asked him to suddenly become so famous all of a sudden, so much that everyone in the streets is talking about him? Besides, it's just a name, he probably won't ever find out about it. Mu Xueqing flung her hair. The world that Zhang Shi lived in was vastly different from theirs, it was impossible for them to ever be associated with him. Since he had become a huge topic in the past 2 days, they could make use of his name to intimidate that aggressive teacher. Alright, let's do it this way then. After contemplating for a moment, the group felt that there wasn't too much of a problem with the plan and they nodded in agreement. When that teacher arrives, make sure not to display your hostility. All of you must be respectful to him so as to not allow him to grab hold of any of your handles. Mu Xueqing instructed. Yes. The group answered. Is this the class I will be taking? Just when the group was busy plotting against Zhang Xian himself was currently standing outside the classroom, looking around to verify that he had come to the right location. Chapter 323, You're Expelled. After Lu Laoshi had settled the problems of the 2 students, Principal Xia no longer doubted his capability and passed the class token over. Based on his teaching experience in Hengtian Academy, he knew that each of these tokens represented a student. Placing them in his storage ring, he started walking toward his classroom. The school was vast, and he got lost several times. It was only after grabbing a passerby and verifying the directions several times that he finally reached his classroom. Jia. Pushing the door open, he walked in. The classroom was much wider than those in Hengtian Academy. It was around 700 to 800 meters square big, and the ground was forged using smooth bluestone. On the 2 ends, there was a sculpted savage beast each, adding an aura of grandness to the classroom. In the center of the room, there were slightly more than a dozen of students surrounding a beautiful lady. They were absorbed in a discussion, and as such, none of them seemed to sense his presence. Zhang Xian shook his head. The sound of him pushing the open wasn't loud, but it wasn't soft enough for him to go unnoticed either. For all of them to be oblivious to his presence, they were truly lacking in alertness. Walking forward, he was just about to address them when he heard the content of their conversation. Senior, did you really meet Master Teacher Zhang Xian yesterday? And he said that he wanted to take you in as his student? That is Master Teacher Zhang Xian, the #1 genius of Tianwu Kingdom. I really want to meet him too, Senior. If you were to become his student, you must bring me to meet him. I am his loyal fan. Same here, the students surrounding that lady had faces flushed with excitement, as if they were fans talking about their idol. Met me? And I intended to take her in as my student? Zhang Xian was stunned. He hurriedly took a closer look at that lady. He was certain that he had never met that girl before, needless to say, accepting that lady as his student. Besides, he spent the entire day at the Master Teacher Pavilion yesterday, and he came here for the public recruitment right after leaving the library. Thus, how could he have met a Tianwu Academy student? After all, he was someone who didn't even know where the academy was at. Zhang Shi is currently in the midst of conducting a mission for his 2-star Master Teacher examination, and by the time he's back, he will already be a 2-star Master Teacher. Even though it'll be difficult, I will plead with him to conduct a lecture for us, the lady in the middle grinned. However, halfway through her words, she suddenly noticed Zhang Xian and she frowned. Who are you? Why are you in our classroom? Voila! The moment she said those words, the students surrounding her immediately turned around to stare at Zhang Xian with guarded expressions. I have come under the dispatchment of the academy to be your teacher for this term. Facing their gazes, Zhang Xian said. Our teacher. The students were taken aback. As the recording in the record crystal was taken from quite a distance away, they weren't able to see Zhang Xian's appearance clearly. However, after hearing that he had beaten a student up, they thought that he would be a bulky person. They didn't think that he would look so refined. Xueqing, whom Zhang Xian was impersonating, was a 24-year-old young man with a slim build. Even though Zhang Xian thought that the other party's appearance was far from a match to his, at the very least, it was still pleasant to the eye. Paying respect to teacher. The lady in the center coughed, and only then did everyone recover from their daze. They hurriedly bowed and greeted Zhang Xian. My name is Xueqing, and you all can call me Lu Laosher. I will be guiding you all on your cultivation from now onward. After that, Zhang Xian walked up to the lecture stand and sat down. Then, he turned to the lady in the center and asked, You have met Master Teacher Zhang Xian? Reporting to Lu Laosher, it was just a stroke of good luck. Xueqing hurriedly nodded her head. So you really met him? May I know how he looks like? Zhang Xian continued asking. This, not expecting Lu Laosher to ask such a question, Xueqing hesitated for a moment before answering. He is slightly taller than Lu Laosher, and he has a muscular build. When I met him then, he was dressed in a green robe. His eyes are electrifying and his smile is charming. He gives a feeling of one who is unsullied by the world, as though a deity in the heavens. Even though she had heard numerous stories about Zhang Shi, no one had ever described his appearance. Even so, she had no choice but to answer Lu Laosher's question. If she didn't, it would definitely incur the other party's suspicion. Thus, she could only describe him based on her imagination. A bizarre expression appeared on Zhang Xian's face. Zhang Xian was at least aware of how high he stood. Since when did he possess such outstanding appearance? Based on my knowledge, if a 2-star master teacher intends to accept a student, countless people would definitely jump at that opportunity. Furthermore, master teacher Zhang Xian is a genius among geniuses, so there must be many talented students interested in coming under his tutelage. So, why would he accept you as his student? He was already sure that the other party was lying, and based on the expressions of the crowd, he could roughly deduce what they were up to. Thus, Zhang Xian continued questioning. Not expecting this aggressive teacher to ask such difficult questions, Xueqing swayed from side to side. Suppressing the urge to spurt blood, she mustered her courage and continued on with the story. I helped him on a minor affair yesterday, and upon realizing that my talent is still acceptable, Zhang Shi decided to take me in. As for the details, I don't really know either. I see, since Zhang Shi is willing to take you in, as a normal teacher, I don't think that I'm qualified to vie with him over a student. You do have the right to choose your teacher as well. Here is your identity token, you should go to him. Flicking his wrist, Zhang Xian took out a token and threw it over. Zhang Xian didn't know who the lady was, but her blood was infused into the token. By matching the aura of the two, Zhang Xian was still able to find her token easily. What do you mean? Xueqing subconsciously grabbed the token, but she was in a daze. This wasn't how it should have gone. It was impossible for one to only have a single teacher in his entire life. It should be an honor for a student to have a master teacher value his students. Shouldn't Lu Laosher value her more after hearing that Zhang Shi was interested in accepting her? What did he mean by throwing the token over? I don't mean anything. Zhang Xian shrugged casually. Lifting his eyelids slightly, he said, It just means that you're expelled. Expelled? Xueqing's body shuddered, and she nearly spurted a mouthful of blood. I am a genius. Regardless of where I go, I am someone who all teachers want under their tutelage. Yet, to expel me at first sight? Are you sure you aren't joking? That's right. As a student, instead of studying, you choose to use your wits to fool your teacher. Of what use are you to me? Don't worry, I'll report this matter to the academy and have them post an announcement to inform all students of the matter. Thus, you can feel free to go to Zhang Shi. Zhang Xian said calmly. Mu Xueqing's body trembled. Due to her appearance and her talent, she was one of the most celebrated students in the academy. If the entire school were to know of her expulsion, how could she face others in the future? She knew that this teacher was eccentric, but this was way too eccentric. Based on her predictions, even if the other party didn't believe that she was acquainted with Zhang Shi, he would at least be intimidated. After all, what if, against all odds, she was really acquainted with Zhang Shi? Even the principal would have to take her seriously if that was the case. Yet, this fellow, he didn't even bother to weigh the consequences before expelling her from his class. If scoring poorly in the teacher qualification examination was the most shameful matter for a teacher, then being expelled was the most shameful matter for a student. Even if her cultivation were to reach a high level, this blemish would continue to remain with her no matter where she goes. I am not fooling, teacher. Gritting her teeth, Mu Xueqing hurriedly spoke up. You aren't fooling me. Zhang Xian shook his head. Standing up, he placed his hands behind his back and walked slowly around the classroom. Firstly, despite the sound I made coming in, you, as a Pixue realm cultivator, didn't notice me at all. Instead, you continued chatting with the others. Do you think that it makes sense? You chose to disregard the presence of a teacher. This is flouting Clause 17 of the Student Guidelines of Tianwu Academy, disrespecting one's teacher. In severe cases, one is even susceptible to being expelled. Also, to intentionally say that you know Master Teacher Zhang Xian before me, let's put aside the question of whether it is real or not. If it is real, it means that you are using Zhang Shi's reputation to oppress me. Based on Clause 42 of the Student Guidelines, making use of your background to disrespect one's teacher or even threaten him is prohibited. In severe cases, one might even be expelled. On the other hand, if it is false, that means that you are lying to your teacher. This is flouting Clause 45 of the Student Guidelines, spreading false rumors to mislead or deceive a teacher. This is also a clause going against whom calls for expulsion. Regardless of which it is, if we were to operate strictly by the rules, you will be expelled. What else do you have to say for yourself? The Student Guidelines of Tianwu Academy were pasted all over the academy. On his way here, Zhang Xian had passed by it numerous times, and he had long memorized them all. This bunch of children wanted to climb over his head. Since that was the case, he should first teach them that he wasn't one to be trifled with. Mu Xueqing's face became devoid of color. Staggering backward, she stared at Zhang Xian as though he was a monster. Didn't he just arrive at the academy? Why is he so familiar with the Student Guidelines? More importantly, I thought that he is a person who settles matters physically. Why are his verbal skills equally powerful? Pack up your things and leave. I welcome students with their own opinions and thoughts, but I don't welcome students who fan others to stand against me. Zhang Xian gestured. With just a single word, this lady was able to get the other students to greet him. It was clear that she wielded great prestige among the group. If he didn't intimidate them on the first meeting, it would be impossible for Zhang Xian to control them in the future. Teaching wasn't confining one's students to follow strictly by one's instructions. However, if Zhang Xian failed to establish his superior position on the first meeting, he wouldn't be able to control them once they rebelled. More importantly, the students wouldn't learn anything like that. They would underestimate you, and naturally, they wouldn't learn properly from you as well. Teacher Senior Mu is the most talented student in our class. Despite being only 18 this year, she has already reached Pixue realm. She is our goal and direction, so we beseech teacher to rescind your order. Seeing that the new teacher was going to expel their leader as soon as he arrived, Meng Tao immediately stood forward. Most talented student. Goal and direction. She started training when she was 7, and it has been 11 years since then. During that time, she consumed 3 acupoint soothing pill and 10 other pills, but even so, she only managed to open 12 acupoints, giving her a strength of 16 ding. Despite having learned the floating water palm for 3 years, she has only reached minor accomplishment in it. Furthermore, she isn't adept in it yet, and in a battle, she is unable to bring out its full might. On top of that, at least 7 of her acupoints are completely sealed by her turbid jinqi, making it difficult for her to advance in her cultivation. Even reaching Tongxian realm will be a huge hurdle for her. At that point, Zhang Xian turned to Meng Tao and spoke composedly, "This can be called talented as well? You must be joking." Mu Xueqing's face immediately turned as pale as a sheet of paper. Chapter 324, The Dumbfounded Students. Everyone knew that her cultivation speed was amazing, and that she was a genius. However, none of them knew that it was because of her clan. Furthermore, due to the excessive number of pills she had consumed in the past few years, pill poison had accumulated in her body, making it extremely difficult for her to raise her cultivation. Otherwise, she could have long applied for graduation upon reaching Pixue realm. She wouldn't have to remain in the academy all this while. Not a single teacher had noticed her condition, not even the previous teacher who she was fond of. Yet, this person was able to point out her condition accurately despite having just met her. This was way too fearsome. Could it be that he wasn't an aggressive teacher, but someone who possessed true capability? Mu Xueqing's body trembled. If that wasn't the case, how was he able to tell that 7 acupoints had been sealed with her turbid jinqi and that it would be hard for her to reach Tongxian realm with just a single gaze? Meng Tao also didn't expect this teacher to know so much either. Even though he had been with Senior Mu daily for several years, he didn't know of this matter either. Frozen on the spot, he wanted to speak up for his senior, but couldn't find the words to say. In the previous academy tournament, Senior Mu was ranked number 10. She is one of the most talented geniuses in the academy, and everyone agrees on it. Why are you saying that she isn't a genius? A female student couldn't accept Zhang Xian's judgment. Being a genius isn't about how far one can progress in a limited period of time, but how far one is able to go. It is incredible that she has reached Pixue realm at her age, but due to pill poison accumulating in her body and the fact that she has cultivated a mindset of reliance on them, her future growth is limited. Zhang Xian shook his head. Since he was taking over the class, he was given basic information on the students. Matching it with the students, he could tell that this lady with appearance that could match Wang Ying's was the strongest student in the class, Mu Xueqing. Knowing her name, it wasn't too difficult to look into her background. Mu Xueqing's father was a famous 2-star apothecary. What others deemed as incomparably valuable pills wasn't anything much to her. While it provided her an edge over the other students, it also created a fatal flaw for her future cultivation. Even though Zhang Xian didn't use the Library of Heaven's Path, given his soul depth of 10. 1 and his expertise as an apothecary, he was able to discern and deduce Mu Xueqing's condition with a glance. After all, he used his own strength to take the 2-star master teacher examination. If he couldn't even see this much, it would have been impossible for him to pass the first 4 tests. This Mu Xueqing's cultivation was not bad, but she was too reliant on pills. This was detrimental to her future growth. All medicine possessed poison, and the same applied for pills as well. Of course, that was assuming that the pills didn't reach the level of an inscribed pill. Be it formation, satiation, or perfection, considerable amount of impurities still remained in those pills. Without pure jinqi to wash away these impurities, it was very easy for the pill poison to accumulate and block one's acupoints, slowing down the progress of one's cultivation. This was precisely the reason why many people choose not to consume pills unless they were unable to achieve a breakthrough with their own strength. It was just like with an illness. If one could tide through it easily, very few people would choose to resort to medicine even if they knew that medicine would help them recover faster. Her current cultivation speed was outstanding. Furthermore, with a 2-star apothecary of a father guiding her along, her foundation was strong as well. However, as time passed, she would slowly lose out to her peers. In fact, it was a huge question whether she could even reach Tongxian realm or not. The pill poison was one problem, but the mindset she formed which made her reliant on pills was another one. As she achieved breakthroughs in her cultivation relying on medicine, she had already lost confidence in herself. She isn't a genius. In fact, you are in a much better position than her. Zhang Xian turned to the female student who had just spoken up for Mu Xueqing and said, even though your cultivation is only at Pigu realm primary stage, you have trained your physical body well, and your state of mind is steady as well. If I'm not wrong, there's a beast tamer in your family who used the blood essence of a savage beast to help you raise your cultivation. Such a method is similar to consuming medicine to raise one cultivation, but as the blood essence of savage beasts is more compatible with the human body, not only will it not hinder your cultivation, it will even make your muscles more compact, thus raising your strength. If I'm not wrong, you should be capable of battling against Pigu realm intermediate stage opponents. The female student nearly leaped in shock. Her father was a 1-star beast tamer, and before she reached Pigu realm, she had consumed the blood essence of a savage beast. This made her physical body significantly stronger than an ordinary cultivator's, thus granting her the strength to fight against those with cultivation exceeding hers. She had only told this matter to a few good friends, so it was impossible for the academy to know of it. Yet, this teacher was able to point it out with a single glance. This was way too scary. However, while the blood essence of a savage beast is not bad, there's a saying that, the weak must be slowly nourished. There won't be severe side effects if a male were to consume it, but for you. The body of a female is already weak, and while triggering your physical functions through the blood essence might grant you significant strength in the short run, as time goes by, all kinds of invisible side effects will start appearing. It is just as if a severely ill patient consumed 1,000-year-old ginseng. Not only will his illness not be treated, it might even claim his life. Zhang Xian shook his head. The female student's skin was slightly red, and her blood was boiling forcefully. Her condition showed signs of the beast tamer secret arts. Even though it wasn't written in the information provided by the academy, it wasn't too difficult for Zhang Xian to deduce this much. You as well. After speaking on the two ladies' circumstances, Zhang Xian's gaze landed on Meng Tao. You have a reserved personality, and there is a shroud of scholarly aura around you. Also, I can see several calluses between your thumb and your middle finger, and I don't think that there's any battle technique that would result in that. Furthermore, there is a slight patch of darkness at the corner of your shirt. If I'm not wrong, you should be fond of painting, and you often imitate the drawings of experts. However, it is a pity that you aren't looking deep enough, resulting in your failure to capture the essence and spirit of whatever you see. If you are to continue painting like that, it is unlikely that you will ever create a spiritual canvas or infused intentions level painting. As for you, you must be interested in tea ceremony. I can catch a slight aroma of tea from you and it smells refreshing as well. However, you have been spending more time on the way of tea than your cultivation, causing the latter to stagnate and become unstable. If I'm not wrong, you haven't achieved a breakthrough in a year's time. Furthermore, your will in cultivation is lacking. You often ignore your teacher's instructions and spend your time thinking about other matters. You are the typical example of a person who gets easily distracted by toys, with his hands behind his back. Zhang Xian pointed out the conditions of 4 students straightforwardly, and there was no mistake in his words at all. Everyone was shocked and dumbfounded. The entire room fell silent. What in the world was going on? They had just decided to intentionally ask him questions on their other occupations so as to embarrass him, but before they could say anything, he had deduced their occupations and spoke about them casually. Could it be that this teacher was skilled in all occupations? If that wasn't the case, how could he deduce so easily based on an ink mark on the corner of his shirt and the scent on the other's body that Meng Tao liked painting and the other male student was interested in tea ceremony? This was way too scary. Alright, show me your battle techniques. Seeing that he had managed to amaze everyone, Zhang Xian turned to the remaining students and said. The situation with the first four was more apparent, and he was well versed in their occupations as well. Thus, he was able to speak of them easily. On the other hand, he couldn't do the same for the remaining students. Tianwu Academy was completely different from that countryside Hengtian Academy. Other than cultivating, most students would take on an occupation that they liked as well. Even though most of them wouldn't even reach the level of an apprentice, it could serve as a hobby and a way to train their state of mind. It was just like Lu Shi and the others learning the way of tea from Elder Tian. Their understanding of tea ceremony hadn't reached the level of an apprentice, but this didn't hinder their interest in it at all. These fellows were the same as well. Even though they had learned a little of their supporting occupation, they were still a considerable distance away from reaching the level of an apprentice. Yes. Amazed by the teacher before them, the others immediately executed their battle technique, not daring to hesitate at all. In an instant, the howling of the wind roared in the entire classroom. A moment later, Zhang Xian nodded his head. He had to say that the students in Tianwu Academy were at a much higher caliber than those in Hengtian Academy. Regardless of whether it was their battle techniques, cultivation techniques, or their understanding toward their supporting occupation, it wasn't something that Zhu Hong, Mo Xiao, and the others could compare to. The battle technique, White Canary in the Clear Skies, you practiced has swift and powerful movements, but you aren't able to catch up with their pace. Furthermore, your Jinqi is too lacking to train in this technique. If you were to meet with a slightly stronger opponent, without even moving, if you were to attack your armpit, you would immediately fall in defeat. The reason why there is such a situation is because you aren't serious about your training. If I'm not wrong, your supporting occupation should be a blacksmith. A blacksmith needs to refine all kinds of ores and metals, and this requires great strength. Wielding the hammer for extended periods of time caused the strength of your right arm to far surpass your left, resulting in imbalance. A bird has a pair of wings, and if one wing is stronger than the other, it would be weird if a problem didn't occur. You must be interested in appraising. However, it is a pity that appraising is a money-burning occupation. Judging from how tattered your uniform is, you must have worn it for more than half a year already. Which is to say your family isn't too well off. Despite not possessing the money, why are you learning appraisal? Without coming into contact with true treasures, will you be able to identify a treasure if you see one? As for you, you are dedicated to your cultivation training, and as such, you didn't pick any supporting occupation. This isn't anything much, but did you realize that even though you are diligent in your training, you didn't improve much? This isn't because you aren't working hard enough or are lacking in talent. It is because you are cultivating wrongly. It should have been a wide and open cultivation technique, but you cultivated it as though a close and confined technique. Walking among the students, every single seemingly casual word of Zhang Xian would cause a student to pale and sweat profusely. This Lu Laoshi was able to tell the problems in their cultivation and supporting occupations through their battle technique, and his words were spot on. His discerning ability was truly at a frightening level. It was almost terrifying. Their supporting occupations were at a very low mastery, barely coming into contact with the basics, but they spanned over 7 to 8 occupations. Furthermore, Zhang Xian spoke the same words as those said by their supporting occupation teachers. This wasn't a feat that a normal cultivation teacher should be capable of. In fact, they felt that even a master teacher might not be as discerning as him. This, Xueqing was completely dumbfounded. It was just a moment ago that she confidently said that as long as they asked him some questions on their occupations, this new teacher would definitely back down. Yet before they could say anything, the other party had already stripped them bare, pointing out to them all their flaws. Aren't you a teacher who dealt with students through violence? Aren't you just a normal teacher, one who hasn't even reached the level of a star teacher? Why do you seem to know everything? Why do you seem to be adept in everything? What kind of monster did the academy send them? Chapter 325, The Shocked Elders Elder Hall. The teachers who came for the public recruitment had all left and Principal Xia was gone as well. All that were left were the elders. The class by Fan Lauscher left behind is one of the best classes in the entire academy, as well as the one that's the hardest to take. I wonder if Lu Lauscher can subdue them and make them listen to him obediently. Upon recalling the arrangements made previously, an elder shook his head. The students in the class possessed superior talent, and on top of their high cultivation, most of them had strong backgrounds as well. Putting everything aside, their leader Mu Xueqing was the only daughter of a 2-star apothecary Mu Dan of the Apothecary Guild, and she was well doted on by him. Putting aside her high cultivation, she had many tricks up her sleeves as well. No ordinary teacher would dare to offend her. I'm afraid that it will be difficult. Those students are troublesome. Have you forgotten the teachers we sent to them before? They didn't even last for a day. Another elder flashed a bitter smile. If that wasn't the case, we wouldn't have to conduct a public recruitment for them. The main reason why a public recruitment was conducted during the term wasn't just because of the departure of those teachers. After all, if a teacher could take 10 students, taking 20 wasn't too much of a problem either. They could simply scatter the class and spread them out over the others, and assign a few teachers over to take them. However, the main problem was that these students refused to cooperate. Especially this class. They had sent several teachers already, but none of them lasted for more than a few days before being chased away. Furthermore, due to backgrounds of the most of them, the academy wasn't in a position to punish them too harshly as well. After a few rounds, no teachers were willing to accept them anymore. Left without a choice, they could only hire teachers from the outside. I think that there's still a chance though. Those 2 students from before, one of them had an aversion towards studying while the other one was prone to violence. These were the most difficult problems a teacher could face. Yet, this Lu Lauscher easily solved them and even reprimanded the principal at that. He isn't any simple figure as well. He might really be able to subdue all of these students. This Lu Lauscher is indeed gutsy, but each of those students is a thorny one. I wonder what kind of conflicts would emerge when the 2 of them meet one another. Say, do you all think that they will fight? An elder suddenly asked worriedly. Everyone suddenly froze. If it was any other teacher, in fear of the teacher guild and in consideration of their identity, it would be impossible for them to lay their hands on the students. However, they couldn't say the same about that Lu Lauscher. He even dared to insult the principal, a 1-star master teacher, to be blind. Not to mention, he had beaten that male student in front of their eyes. If Mu Xueqing and the others went overboard, it seemed very likely that he would get physical with them. If these students were volatile chemicals, then this Lu Lauscher must be an explosive one. Didn't you see the principal's brooding expression? He left as soon as the public recruitment came to an end. This is bad. If they were to fight, given the background of those students, it might cause a huge uproar. That's right, we have to stop them. At this, the elders' faces immediately twisted in fear. Unable to remain still, they hurriedly stood up and rushed over. If the incident of a teacher beating up a student were to occur here, then Tianwu Kingdom would surely become the laughingstock of all surrounding kingdoms. The Master-Teacher Pavilion might even be urged into action. Realizing the graveness of the matter, the elders hurriedly rushed to Zhang Xian's classroom. It's over, look. Before even reaching the classroom, an elder wailed in agony. Hearing the shout, everyone hurriedly turned their gazes over and saw a female student kneeling motionlessly outside the classroom. Upon seeing her appearance, everyone staggered and they nearly keeled over. This was the most troublesome student in the class, Mu Xueqing. This lass had good talent, and her cultivation was high as well. She was already a handful of trouble normally, but to have her kneel at the door. Lu Lauscher, you are about to smash through the heavens. They hurried over. Xueqing, why are you kneeling outside? Hurry up and get up. An elder walked up and tried to help her up. As this elder wasn't even a master-teacher apprentice, he had to address Mu Xueqing's father as Apothecary Mu respectfully whenever he saw the other party. Upon seeing this shocking sight, how could he remain motionless? I can't. Mu Xueqing shook her head. I've done wrong, so it's only deserving for me to be punished. If I were to stand up now, Lu Laoshi will surely expel me. If so, how can I face my father? We will deal with that Lu Laoshi for you, so don't worry. They thought that she would plead with them to deal with Lu Laoshi, but never in their wildest imaginations did they expect her to say such words. Stunned, Elder Bai found the words he was about to say stuck in his mouth. With widened eyes, he asked, what did you say? It's deserving for you to be punished. You have done wrong. The other elders were stunned as well. Mu Xueqing was nicknamed the Little Demoness in the academy due to her unruliness. Yet, to be kneeling at the door and admitting her mistakes, why did it seem so inconceivable? Indeed. After Lu Laoshi's guidance, I realized my own inadequacies, and I am willing to study under him as his student. Elders, there's no need to persuade me anymore. There was a determined look in Mu Xueqing's eyes. That Lu Laoshi was able to point out her physical problems, as well as those of other students, with a single glance. Without a doubt, he was a person of great capabilities. She had heard her father mentioning the issue of pill poison as well. It was something unavoidable when one consumed pills. Given how Lu Laoshi was able to point out her problems so easily, he might have a solution to it. It wasn't easy for her to come by such an opportunity and such a formidable teacher. If she allowed this chance to pass her by, she would definitely regret it for life. She might be rebellious, but she wasn't a fool. Guidance? Realized your own inadequacies? Elder Bai and the others were perplexed. When did this Mu Xueqing become so obedient? If she was like from the start, she wouldn't have scared away several teachers. Elder Bai, is it possible that Lu Laoshi has already started? An elder suddenly thought of something and he paled. A shudder suddenly ran through everyone's bodies. Given that it was Lu Laoshi they were talking about, it was possible. That male student from before also changed his attitude after being beaten up. Could this Mu Xueqing be the same as well? As such a thought ran through their mind, they subconsciously turned to look at her. However, they couldn't find a single injury on her. Jia. Just when they were perplexed over the matter, the doors suddenly opened. A student walked out. It was Meng Tao. Senior, teacher has asked for you to come in. Yes. Hearing that she had obtained her teacher's permission, Mu Xueqing's eyelids leaped and she immediately charged in excitedly without even bidding the elders farewell. It doesn't seem like she has been beaten up. Baffled by the entire situation, an elder commented. If she was beaten into submission, there should at least be some injuries on her. Even if she wasn't injured, she should harbor some resentment toward the other party. To run in excitedly the moment the teacher called for her to enter, to the point that her face was red in agitation. Who in the world could look so happy and excited after being beaten up? But if she wasn't beaten up, why in the world would this willful lass be kneeling obediently at the door? You're called Meng Tao, right? An elder hurriedly stopped Meng Tao before he could return to the classroom. Your grandfather, Meng Fan, is a good friend of mine. We've met the other time as well. Elder Jean. Only upon hearing someone call him did Meng Tao realize that there were so many people at the doorstep. Shocked, Meng Tao's body stiffened and he hurriedly clasped his fist. This Elder Jean was a good friend of his grandfather and they've met many times. Did Lu Laoshi inflict any physical punishment on you all? Elder Jean asked. The other elders pricked up their ears as well. Inflict physical punishment? Meng Tao was taken aback. Lu Laoshi is such an amiable person, why would he inflict physical punishment on us? Then Mu Xueqing, Elder Jean pointed. Oh, Senior Mu did it of her own volition. Teacher got her to pack up and leave this classroom to join the other classes, but Senior was unwilling to. Thus, she kneeled outside in hope that teacher would change his mind. Meng Tao said. Of her own volition. The elders glanced at one another. Based on their previous experiences, if a teacher dared to talk to her like that, this young miss would have already rushed to the elder hall to cause a ruckus. Why was she keeping silent this time, even willingly kneeling at the door? Elders, Lu Laoshi is still in the midst of the lesson and I have to get back now. Farewell. After saying so, Meng Tao hurriedly rushed back into the classroom. Seeing that the fellow was the same as well, the elders couldn't help but open a slit in the classroom doors and peer in. Through the slit, they could see the students standing respectfully before Lu Laoshi. No matter what Lu Laoshi asked them to do, they would immediately carry it out without protesting or hesitating at all. Was this really that most unruly and troublesome class of the academy? How did it suddenly change so abruptly? Even if Lu Laoshi was capable, how long has it been since he left the elder hall? Adding it up, it was only an hour at most. In this time, he managed to whip the most rebellious students in the academy into obedience. Can anyone tell me what is going on? All of the elders felt dizzy. Chapter 326, 3 Sentences in the Classroom. Mu Xueqing was staring straight forward without blinking at all. She thought that Lu Laoshi would say something after calling her in, but he only got her to stand by in the corner while he continued to offer pointers to the other students one by one. During your cultivation, do you feel a slight blockage when your jinqi flows through your chest? Walking up to a youngster, Lu Laoshi said. Yes. The youngster was shocked to hear Lu Laoshi's words, but he still nodded. The cultivation technique you took up at the start is Tianwu Fundamental Formula. There isn't too much of a problem with your cultivation technique, but when you were trying to break through to the jinqi realm, you directed your jinqi into the wrong meridian, causing a problem to occur with your body. Am I right? That's right, the youngster clenched his fist and nodded. That was true, but it was a matter of 2 years ago, and his previous teacher had already solved this trauma for him. After which, you switched to, for tributaries true martial formula. This cultivation technique is slightly calmer than the former, and it did help to alleviate your problem. However, it doesn't solve the root of your problem, and as time went by, your hidden trauma worsened. Lu Laoshi looked at him calmly. Listen to me, switch to Eastern Blaze Art. Eastern Blaze Art? The corners of Mu Xueqing's mouth twitched. That was the most violent cultivation technique Tianwu Academy had. Even ordinary cultivators had to be careful when practicing it, fearful that it might inflict some grievous injury on them. Given that the other party had already sustained a trauma, wasn't practicing this cultivation technique no different from courting death? The youngster also realized that something was amiss, and his face distorted in distress. Rest assured, I am here. Nothing will happen to you. Lu Laoshi gestured grandly. All right. Clenching his teeth, the youngster nodded. Eastern Blaze Art couldn't be considered a valuable cultivation technique, and there was a copy in the classroom. Taking the copy, the youngster flipped through it and started cultivating. Driving his jinqi according to the formula written inside the manual, the youngsters flushed and paled at intervals, as though he was suffering from irrepressible pain. Just when Mu Xueqing thought that he would fail to hold on and his cultivation would go berserk, his aura suddenly rose. Boom! The sound of jinqi exploding resounded, and the aura within the other party's body suddenly soared swiftly. A BR breakthrough? Mu Xueqing uttered with quivering lips. Unable to comprehend the sight before her, her body trembled in shock. The other students also stared at the seemingly inconceivable sight with eyes widened as though a gong. As fellow peers who were together on a daily basis, they knew the situation of that youngster well. He had been stuck at his current cultivation realm for more than half a year without progressing at all. The previous teacher had tried many methods, and even Mu Xueqing had pleaded with her father for a precious pill for him, but it was all to no avail. His previous teacher said that he could only persevere and progress slowly. It would take at least 2 years before his cultivation could start to advance in the end. Just by getting him to change a cultivation technique, Lu Laoshi managed to induce a breakthrough in his cultivation. Did it have to be so exaggerated? Do you find it difficult for you to harness your strength? It is because of your Jinqi. Ignoring everyone's shock, Lu Laoshi acted as though he had only done something insignificant and immediately went on to the next student. 10 minutes later, the student's aura also rose suddenly, and with a kaboom, he broke through his bottleneck and achieved an advancement in his cultivation realm. Pang! 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 In less than 4 hours, all of the students in the classroom had their cultivation raised significantly. This Lu Laoshi was as though an enlightened sage. With just a few words, he was able to point out the problems in their cultivation and resolve them. With a pale face, Mu Xueqing's entire body stiffened. This sight was too shocking. Those who were weak-minded would have probably gone insane on the spot. Her father was a 2-star apothecary, and due to his esteemed standing, she had met with numerous star teachers and even master teachers. But even the master teachers she met weren't so incredible as to get a person to achieve a breakthrough in their cultivation with just a few casual words. This was completely beyond her comprehension. How could he be so incredible? He is probably on par with Zhang Shi. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, at this moment, Mu Xueqing felt nothing but reverence for Lu Laoshi. When she first heard of how this teacher inflicted physical punishment on a student, she was extremely angry, and she even found herself loathing him. Yet, after seeing the other party inducing a breakthrough in each of them with just a few casual pointers, she realized that he was an extraordinarily capable teacher. He didn't pale in comparison to her idol, master teacher Zhang Xian. When did the academy recruit such a monster? Looking at the other students, Mu Xueqing trembled once more. The gazes they directed toward Lu Laoshi had changed as well. They were filled with admiration and respect. From the looks of it, even if she were to try to incite them to stand against him, none of them would listen to her. In less than 4 hours, he managed to surpass her position in the group's hearts. Even though this was all happening before her eyes, she couldn't help but suspect that her eyes were playing tricks on her. It's your turn. Disregarding the frenzied Mu Xueqing, Zhang Xian walked up to another youngster. This was the final student in the class, Lu Chong. He was currently at Fighter 5 Dan Dingli Realm primary stage. Upon seeing the teacher, the youngster didn't say anything. He simply clasped his fist and stood silently on the spot. Lu Laoshi, Lu Chong doesn't like to speak. Meng Tao hurriedly walked up. I heard that his cultivation and family background are ordinary, and it is because he kneeled at the entrance of Tianwu Academy for 7 days straight that an exception was made for him. Recalling the information provided by the academy, Zhang Xian asked. Most of the students in this class had huge backgrounds, but this Lu Chong was an exception. The part on his background and family was vague, and the only thing detailed was that he had kneeled outside for 7 days straight before his admission. Yes. Meng Tao nodded. To be able to kneel for so long to become a student of the academy, you do have the tenacity. However, cultivation isn't all about tenacity. Zhang Xian shook his head. Without a doubt, the student before him was the most stoic student in the class. However, despite having been admitted into the academy for 2 years, he had only managed to progress from Pigu Realm primary stage to Dingli Realm primary stage. The cultivation technique you are currently practicing is Frost Martial technique, right? Zhang Xian continued looking at Lu Chong. The youngster nodded silently. Please don't blame him, Lu Laoshi. He is like that. We have been together for more than 2 years, but he hasn't spoken more than 3 sentences. Seeing how the fellow was still reluctant to talk, Meng Tao quickly explained awkwardly. Oh. He hasn't spoken more than 3 sentences in 2 years. Zhang Xian chuckled softly. I will make him speak more than 3 sentences now. Meng Tao was taken aback, and the others expressed their disbelief as well. Even Mu Xueqing couldn't help but shake his head. This Lu Chong was no different from a mute. Even her, as Tianwu Academy's famous beauty, was unable to pry his mouth open. The previous teacher also failed to make him speak as well. If not for the fact that they had heard him speak before, they would have thought that he was mute. He hadn't even spoken 3 sentences in 2 years. To make him speak more 3 sentences now. How was that possible? You all don't believe me? Sensing the crowd's disbelief, Xueqing asked. Then, he turned to the youngster before him and asked him as well, you don't believe me as well? Xueqing was still silent. Fine then, not minding it, Xueqing placed his hands behind his back and said, if you were to cultivate on like that, you won't even reach Pixue realm in 10 years. At this rate, you will be dead before you can exact your vengeance. Exact vengeance? Everyone was taken aback. Why did Lu Laoshi suddenly bring up exacting some vengeance? They had been with Xueqing for 2 years, but they had never heard that he had a grudge against anyone. Just when they were perplexed over the matter, they saw the seemingly mute youngster suddenly turning pale, and his body trembled in agitation. Teacher, how did you know that my goal is to exact vengeance? You don't have to bother how I know of it. Your vengeance is both a motivation as well as a hindrance to your cultivation. You are suppressing your worries too deep within, and it has suppressed your cultivation, making it difficult for you to achieve a breakthrough. I know that the reason you refuse to speak is because you're afraid that you might accidentally speak of your enemy's name and make them aware of your existence. Xueqing said calmly. Don't worry, as long as you believe in me, I promise you that you will be able to exact your vengeance within 10 days. 10 days? Xueqing found his words hard to believe. This enemy is a Tongxian realm expert. He was only at Dingli realm primary stage, whereas his enemy was a Tongxian realm expert. There was a huge gap between the two, and it couldn't be covered that easily. Let alone 10 days, even 5 years would be insufficient for him to catch up. It's your choice to choose whether you want to believe me or not. However, you only get this one chance. Xueqing said. Conflicted, Xueqing hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth. His knees caved in and, he kneeled on the floor. Lu Laoshi, please guide me. It has been more than 3 sentences. Hearing the duo's conversation, everyone flew into a frenzy. Near the master-teacher pavilion, in a grand residence. Lu Shi, how long will it take before teacher finishes his 2-star master-teacher examination and returns? Xiaoya asked. I don't know either. I've tried looking into the affair at the master-teacher pavilion this morning, and based on what I've got, he has already left the capital to conduct the mission, and they estimated that it would take at least 10 days. Recalling the answer from the master-teacher pavilion, Lu Ling replied. That is quite long. Xiaoya's eyebrows furrowed into deep creases. 10 days isn't really long, it depends on how you look at it. How about I bring you all around Tianwu Royal City so that you all can expand your horizons? Seeing the bitter look on the faces of Xueqing's students, Lu Ling chuckled. Expand our horizons? Sure. Where are we going? Yuan Tao's eyes lit up. Tianwu Royal City was a city far grander than any of those in Tianxian Kingdom. He had already wanted to explore the city, and upon hearing Lu Shi's words, he could no longer hold back his excitement. Why don't I bring you all to Tianwu Academy first? That is the greatest academy in the 13 surrounding kingdoms, a sacred land for cultivators. From time to time, the master teachers from the master teacher pavilion would head there to conduct lectures. It might be good for you to take a look around there. Lu Ling pondered for a moment before replying. Master teachers conduct lectures there as well. The greatest academy? Zhang Shi would take a minimum of 10 days anyway, it would be good to take a look. Upon hearing that master teachers would conduct lessons there and that it was a sacred land for cultivators, everyone was moved. Furthermore, I heard that Tianwu Academy promotes a free learning environment, so we can enter the lesson of any teacher freely without reporting in advance. It would be good for you to listen to the lectures of other teachers as well. Lu Ling smiled. All right. Hearing that they could listen in to any lessons they wanted, the crowd was excited. Thrilled, Zhao Ye and the others immediately set off for Tianwu Academy. Chapter 327, Teacher, I was wrong. Teacher, can I really exact vengeance within 10 days? In the one-to-one tutoring room, Xueqing kneeled before Zhang Xian. Until now, he still found the situation hard to believe. Shouldering a debt of bloodshed, he had never told anyone about his burden, and he never expressed it either. In order to prevent himself from revealing it in his dreams or such, he even feigned a mute. He was confident that he had hidden it well. But this Lu Laoshi was able to conclude that he was shouldering a huge grudge just by hearing of his past affairs and his cultivation state. His capability was way too fearsome. More importantly, the other party promised him that he would be able to exact his vengeance within 10 days. His enemy was a Tongxian realm cultivator. If it was that simple, he wouldn't have to cultivate as though his life was at stake for the past 2 years. Since I have promised you as such, I have my own ways. However, my method will be excruciating, and whether you can take it or not will be up to your will. Zhang Xian looked at the youngster. He was extremely satisfied with this student of his. In order to learn under a teacher to raise his cultivation, he was willing to kneel for 7 days straight. For fear of revealing his secret, he pretended to be mute for 2 years straight. Regardless of which it was a clear sign that he had strong mental fortitude and a resolute will. His talent might not be anything much, but as long as he was groomed properly, his cultivation would definitely soar. It was just a matter of time before he surpassed Xueqing. Otherwise, Zhang Xian wouldn't have said that much to him. When accepting students, he valued mental fortitude and will more than anything else. As for talent, with his capability, it didn't mean anything to him. As long as I can have my revenge, I am willing to suffer any kind of pain. Xueqing clenched his fists tightly. His eyes were determined. All right. Placing his hands behind his back, Zhang Xian stared at him with deep eyes. There's a special occupation which none is willing to come in contact with or bring up. Have you heard of poison masters? I have. Xueqing nodded. He had wanted to learn the art of a poison master back then, but he didn't have the connections to look for the poison hall. Teacher, could it be that? Xueqing hesitated for a moment before asking doubtfully. Wasn't poison master a job which was looked down on by the others? Could it be that Lu Laoshi was a poison master? Or did he want to impart to him the skills of a poison master? I am not a poison master, and I won't teach you that either. Seeing through his thoughts, Zhang Xian shook his head. I have a way that can raise your strength swiftly, but it will require the use of poison. Even though it won't be detrimental to your future cultivation, you will have to suffer excruciating pain. Furthermore, if you fail to endure it, you will die. What he was referring to was the method to cultivate the poison body which he saw in the books in the poison hall. Once one managed to successfully cultivate the poison body, not only would one be immune to the toxicity of poisons, one's strength, spirit, and agility would be enhanced significantly as well, granting one significantly higher fighting prowess. Other than the Heaven's Path divine art, the only way to raise his strength immensely within the limited time he had was this. Usually, when poison masters cultivated the poison body, they would consume poison and this would affect their longevity. Back then, the reason why Gumu sustained a trauma was due to this as well. However, after the compilation of the Library of Heaven's Path, the detriments to the cultivation method had been reduced to the bare minimum. Even so, without the support of Heaven's Path Shinchi, it wouldn't be easy to cultivate it. One would have to suffer a great pain. Since Xueqing possessed strong mental fortitude, it was worth a try. Perhaps, he might produce outstanding results. Regardless of how much pain it puts me in, as long as it allows me to exact vengeance, I am willing to give it a try. Xueqing's eyes were filled with resolve. He only had this one opportunity. While he was cultivating, his enemy wasn't resting either. Given his talent of only a single rise in a cultivation realm every 2 years, it was impossible for him to ever surpass the other party. Since this Lu Laoshi said that he could give him the strength to exact vengeance within 10 days, he was willing to believe in the party. He had seen with his own eyes how his fellow peers grew visibly stronger under his guidance. No matter how foolish he could be, it was obvious that he was a person of great means. Seeing the resolve in the other party's eyes, Zhang Xian nodded in satisfaction. Then, with a deep and slightly cold voice, he warned, "The cultivation technique that I am about to impart you must not be leaked to anyone. Otherwise, even if I don't do anything, you will suffer a recoil from your Jinqi and you will die tragically." "Yes." Lu Chong nodded. Raising a hand, he swore, Lu Chong, swear to never impart the cultivation technique and secret arts Lu Laoshi impart me to anyone else, and if I were to break my vow, may my soul dissipate." Zhang Xian tapped on an acupoint on Lu Chong's body and discreetly sent a surge of Jinqi into his body. The cultivation technique he was imparting to the other party was too powerful. If it were to leak out, it would bring trouble to him, as well as the world. Even though the other party had sworn to it, he himself needed to prepare a countermeasure as well. After his study and research of poison, his Heaven's Path Jinqi was capable of turning into a tonic or a poison with a single thought. If the other party were to seal his mouth tightly, this surge of Jinqi would clear away all of the obstacles lying in his meridians and raise his cultivation. However, if he were to abuse his strength, this surge of Jinqi could also have him killed in an instant. Cultivating the poison body requires the complementation of poison. I don't have such medicinal herbs on me at the moment, so I will impart the cultivation technique to you tomorrow. However, I will teach you another technique that can strengthen your physical body. You should learn it well, as a strong physical body is required to withstand the lethal poison. After making preparations, Zhang Xian looked him in the eye and said, "I will only recite the cultivation formula once. How much you remember and understand will depend on your ability. Don't let me down." "I won't let teacher down." Lu Chong nodded. "Very well." This physical body enhancement technique, Zhang Xian started explaining. The technique he was referring to was the Heaven's Path Golden Body. Of course, he imparted the simplified version, which he imparted to Xiaoye and the others as well. Cultivating the poison body required one's body to come into contact with lethal poison. If one's body wasn't strong enough, it would be hard for one to hold on. Even though this Heaven's Path Golden Body was inferior to the one which Zhang Xian cultivated, it was still a product of the Library of Heaven's Path and it mustn't be underestimated. As long as one cultivated it seriously, it wouldn't be a problem for one to grow stronger swiftly, and this is what we call a complete body. Soon, Zhang Xian finished reciting the cultivation formula. "Teacher, thank you for your bestowment." After hearing the formula of the technique, Lu Chong's body trembled and his face flushed in agitation. Having studied in Tianwu Academy for 2 years, he had seen quite a few cultivation techniques and he also knew of a few physical body enhancement technique formulas. Compared to the one which Lu Laoshi had just taught him, they were all trash. At the very least, this technique was at Phantom Pinnacle or above. If Lu Laoshi were to auction it, it would definitely fetch an astronomical sum. Even the Tianwu royal family would go in a frenzy for it. It was such a valuable technique, yet Lu Laoshi taught it to him without asking for anything. This was a huge debt which he would never be able to repay. "You should start cultivating." Ignoring the other party's agitation, Zhang Xian waved his hands casually. "Yes." Knowing that teacher didn't like to waste his words, Lu Chong hurriedly sat on the floor and started cultivating. Following the Heaven's Path Golden Body's formula, Lu Chong drove his Jinqi on a specific path in his body, and after a moment, he felt an extremely comfortable and relaxing sensation gush through his body. All of the traumas he had sustained before instantaneously disappeared. Incredible! After an unknown period of time, a cracking sound echoed in the muscles throughout Lu Chong's body, and his strength rose significantly. "Who?" Lu Chong opened his eyes. At this moment, he felt as though he harnessed boundless strength in his body. Not bad. You managed to achieve minor accomplishment within 2 hours. This shows that you have a good foundation. Zhang Xian nodded his head in satisfaction. For revenge, the other party was willing to take all kind of pain, so he must have trained his body for this goal as well. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for him to reach minor accomplishment for the simplified version of Heaven's Path Golden Body within 2 hours. You can go out now. Your other classmates are probably anxious for you. After he was done with the cultivating the physical body enhancement technique, Zhang Xian pushed the door and walked out. It had been more than 2 hours since the duo entered, and the students outside were probably anxious from waiting already. In the classroom, Lu Laoshi said that he would grant Lu Chong the strength to defeat a Tongxian realm expert within 10 days. Do you think that it is possible? Until now, that student was unable to believe it. I don't know either. However, judging from how Lu Laoshi was able to help us achieve breakthroughs in our cultivation just by giving us a few casual pointers, I doubt that his discernment is inferior to that of a master teacher. I have heard the lessons of a master teacher before, and it is only slightly deeper than the lecture of our previous teacher. Compared to Lu Laoshi, I think that their lessons are lacking. Indeed, is he really just an ordinary teacher? Discussions sounded in the classroom. Initially, they harbored deep hostility toward this teacher. However, the moment he started guiding them, everyone immediately realized that they had met with a good teacher and fell to his side. At Tongxian realm, one's strength exceeds 100 ding, granting them the might to easily split open a tree. Lu Chong is currently only at Dingli realm primary stage, and that is 2 whole realms away from Tongxian realm. How can he possibly reach Tongxian realm in 10 days under such conditions? Mu Xueqing shook her head. She was at Pixue realm, and she knew how difficult it was to raise one's cultivation. It would already be incredible if Lu Chong could reach Dingli realm intermediate stage within 10 days. To advance 2 whole realms and match a Tongxian realm expert to her, it sounded no different from boasting. Indeed, Meng Tao nodded as well. Back then, it took him an entire year of effort to advance from Dingli realm primary stage to advanced stage. To reach Tongxian realm within 10 days, he didn't think that it was possible either. Jia. Just when they were discussing, the doors suddenly opened and Lu Laoshi and Lu Chong walked out. At this moment, Lu Chong looked spirited, and his eyes were filled with energy. Explosive power could be felt from his body, and it felt like the mighty waves in the ocean, exerting great pressure on the one looking at him. Dingli realm pinnacle. Upon sensing his aura, Mu Xueqing and Meng Tao fell silent. Their eyes grew so wide that they were about to pop out from their eyes. How long had it been since he entered the room with Lu Laoshi? To advance from Dingli realm primary stage to pinnacle in 2 hours, the duo felt like spurting blood. Compared to him, their cultivation speed was no different from a snail's. It took them several months before they could see a slight progress in their cultivation, yet Lu Laoshi simply brought Lu Chong in for just a while and he had already broken through 2 smaller realms. Did it have to be that exaggerated? Furthermore, they were oblivious to the fact that Lu Chong's simplified Heaven's Path Golden Path had granted him the strength exceeding that of an ordinary Dingli realm pinnacle. Adding his physical strength along with that of his Jinqi, he possessed an astounding might of 5 ding. An ordinary Dingli realm pinnacle could only wield a might of 4 ding. This is too incredible, senior. I think it is best that you admit your mistake. It is impossible to find such an incredible teacher anywhere else. Suppressing his shock, Meng Tao hurriedly sent a telepathic message to Meng Tao. Halfway through his words, Meng Tao realized that the other party wasn't responding. Thinking that his senior's proud nature was acting up again, he hurriedly turned around to persuade her, but the unexpected sight before him nearly caused him to faint. Putong. The incomparably arrogant little demoness Mu Xueqing, who would never admit her mistakes, was already kneeling before Lu Laoshi with an earnest expression on her face. Teacher, I am in the wrong, please forgive me. I will do whatever you ask of me in the future. I won't disobey you ever again. Even if that genius master teacher Zhang Xian were to come over, I will disregard him as though he is just mere air. Zhang Xian. Chapter 328, Brawl of the Two Ladies, Stand Up. Even though he felt dismayed at Mu Xueqing's words, Zhang Xian walked over to help her up. He didn't intend to quarrel with a student over this affair. The only reason why he threatened her with expulsion was to warn her so that she would listen obediently in the future. Due to her consumption of pills from young, the pill poison had already permeated deep into her body, blocking her meridians tightly like shackles. He needed her unreserved trust to clear away the impurities in her meridians. Thus, he intentionally gave her the cold shoulder so that she could think it through and cherish this opportunity. If she was willing to grasp this opportunity, Zhang Xian didn't mind saving her. However, if she decided to remain obstinate, Zhang Xian didn't think of it as a huge loss either. At worst, he would just lose a student. If he wanted, he could easily groom students with cultivation surpassing hers within 10 days. Even though there is poison in the pills, it isn't a severe problem. Otherwise, the standing of alchemists won't be that high either. Zhang Xian explained, your cultivation method has the effect of swiftly propelling the medicinal energy through your body, allowing it to take effect swiftly. However, at the same time, it also causes the pill poison to be absorbed into your body swiftly as well, thus causing your condition to become so severe. Over the years, the pill poison accumulated in your meridians, making it difficult to expel it. Write down your cultivation technique, I will modify it for you. As long as you cultivate according to it, the pill poison that has sunk into your body should be expelled in less than 10 days and you will experience a rise in your cultivation as well. Pill poison was a difficult problem for even a 4-star master teacher. However, given that Zhang Xian had cultivated the Heaven's Path divine art, the cultivation technique closest to perfection, it wasn't too difficult for him to solve it. Yes. Not daring to hesitate, Mu Xueqing quickly copied down her cultivation technique on a piece of paper. After taking a look at it, he did a few modifications before passing the paper back to her and instructing her to cultivate according to it. An hour later, Mu Xueqing felt a refreshing sensation gushing through her body. The shackles which seemed to be binding her body before seemed to have been released, and a relaxing feeling surged to embrace her body from within. In fact, she even managed to achieve a small breakthrough in her cultivation, opening up another acupoint. Sensing the change in her body, Mu Xueqing finally understood how incredible this Lu Laoshi was. Instantaneously, she was filled with gratitude for him. Alright, we'll end the lesson here. You all may leave now. After settling Mu Xueqing's issue, Zhang Xian casually waved his hands. The crowd nodded and left the classroom. Leaving the classroom, the group could no longer suppress the excitement in their hearts. Lu Laoshi is simply too formidable. After his guidance, I realized that my cultivation method was entirely wrong. If I were to cultivate according to his instructions, I will surely be able to reach Dingli realm in less than 3 months. It's the same for me as well. After cultivating according to the formula teacher gave me, I feel relaxed all over, and my strength is also progressing swiftly. I didn't expect that a problem I didn't think much of would weigh me down so much. This is what a truly incredible teacher is like. Did you notice that we actually know about the things he had pointed out, but we have never thought of putting them together? I thought that the academy would send another mediocre teacher over, but to think that Lu Laoshi would be this formidable, everyone's eyes were glowing. Even though it hadn't been long since they met with their new teacher, they were already completely amazed by him. To be able to raise our cultivation with just a few casual pointers, even master teachers might not possess such capability. Hearing the group's discussion, Meng Tao couldn't help but add in. Indeed. I've had the honor of meeting with several master teachers, and I even once obtained Pavilion Master Zhang's tutelage jade token and listened to 2 hours of his lecture. His lecture was impressive, but he was still lacking compared to Lu Laoshi's precise guidance. Mu Xueqing nodded. Due to her family background, she had come into contact with numerous master teachers from young, to the point that she had even listened to Pavilion Master Zhang's lesson before. However, his guidance wasn't as spot-on as Lu Laoshi's, the latter pointing straight to the crux of the problem and allowing one to improve immensely once they corrected it. Even Pavilion Master Zhang's lesson is lacking compared to his. Does this mean that our Lu Laosher's teaching ability is already above that of a 2-star master teacher? Meng Tao asked in disbelief. Not only Pavilion Master Jiang, I think that the genius master teacher Zhang Xian also pales in comparison to him. He only managed to cause a huge uproar in the master teacher examination due to his talent. The cultivation of his students aren't anything much. Based on what I've heard, they are all at Dingli realm, and even the strongest of them was only at Pixue realm. Mu Xueqing continued. If he was really as proficient in teaching as Lu Laosher, how could his students be so weak? With a new idol, Mu Xueqing was no longer blinded in her reverence for the genius master teacher. Recalling the news she had heard, she made a comparison between Zhang Xian and Lu Laosher, and arrived at this conclusion. Master teacher Zhang Xian was a talented individual, but in terms of teaching, it was impossible for him to match up to Lu Laosher. Otherwise, how could his direct disciples be so weak? One had to know that Lu Laosher had claimed that he could make Lu Chong defeat a Tongxian realm expert within 10 days. Regardless of how short the duration when master teacher Zhang Xian's students had been with him, it was definitely more than 10 days. It was clear who was the superior one. Who did you say was mediocre in teaching? I dare you to repeat your words. Mu Xueqing had just finished speaking her piece when a cold voice sounded out behind them. Turning around, they saw an incredibly beautiful lady who was around Mu Xueqing's age standing in the distance. Her eyebrows were knitted tightly together in displeasure. Upon seeing this lady, Mu Xueqing, who always prided herself on her looks, couldn't help but gasp in admiration. However, envy soon welled up in her. What business of yours is it whomever I speak of? Mu Xueqing harumphed coldly. She was the little demoness who feared nothing at all. She might have become an obedient lamb facing Lu Laosher's authority, but if a random stranger thought that she could climb over her head, then she must be dreaming. Did you just say that master teacher Zhang Xian is mediocre in teaching, and his students are weak? The beautiful lady opposite to her stared at her with eyes burning with fury. Why? Have I said anything wrong? There is nothing to be said about Zhang Shi's talents, but the students he taught are truly ordinary. Just by looking at their cultivation, one can tell that his teaching abilities are subpar. Mu Xueqing was a person who favored the carrot over the stick. Even though she revered Zhang Shi a lot, she couldn't help but retaliate verbally upon sensing the threat the lady's voice. Since you said so, let's not waste any words. Do you dare to duel with me? The lady's face steeled and she gritted her silver teeth. Duel with you? Mu Xueqing was taken aback. She must be sick. She only casually said that master teacher Zhang Xian's lessons couldn't compare up to Lu Laosher's, yet this lass was acting as though she had killed her entire family. What in the world was she up to? However, as the little demoness and one of the top students in the entire Tianwu kingdom, she couldn't back down a duel. Let's fight then. Do you think that I will be scared of you? Harumphing coldly, Mu Xueqing flung her sleeve. Senior, seeing the little demoness flying to a rage, Meng Tao and the others were shocked. They hurriedly tried to stop her. On the other hand, another lady beside the beautiful lady looked a little worried as well. Xiaoya, Lu Shi told us not to cause any trouble, the female said feebly, worried that they would get into trouble. Wang Ying, they have already insulted our teacher, are we to tolerate it? A young man stepped forward. With a flick of his wrist, he whipped out the spear behind his back, and the joints of the spear started fixing itself together. Indeed, we can't tolerate it. They have insulted our teacher and us. So what if this is Tianwu Academy? A plump-faced fatty stepped forward. They were Xiaoya, Zhenyang, and the others who came to Tianwu Academy for a leisurely stroll. They had been walking around Tianwu Academy, and the grandeur of the top academy of the 13 surrounding kingdoms had indeed left them stunned. After walking for an entire afternoon, just as they were about to return, they heard someone insult Zhang Laosher. How could they watch by the side as the respected figure in their hearts was being sullied? They could tolerate being insulted themselves, but they couldn't allow anyone to insult Zhang Laoshi. In their hearts, Zhang Laoshi was an existence equivalent to a god. What Lu Laoshi and Jiang Chen, all of those meant nothing to them at all. Seeing Zheng Yang and Yuan Tao fervently supporting Zhao Ye's decision, Wang Ying hesitated for a moment before nodding her head, all right. Zhang Xian's 5 students always had a fearless personality. Otherwise, they wouldn't have dared to challenge Lu Sun publicly during the teacher evaluation. Even though they were at Tianwu Academy, and they had no connections or backing here, they couldn't forgive the fact that someone had dared to insult their teacher. There is a sparring ring right in front. Whoever loses must apologize to the other party. Zhao Ye's pitch-black hair flew in the air, and in an instant, she felt as though a pure and valiant goddess. Do you dare to accept the challenge? What is there to fear? Rather, I'm afraid that you will go back on your words when you lose. Mu Xueqing didn't back down at all. Then cut the crap, let's go. Zhao Ye couldn't be bothered to argue with the other party, and she began to walk toward the dueling ring. As an academy for cultivators, Tianwu Academy had average-sized sparring rings throughout the entire campus to allow students to spar with one another and raise their cultivation. What's wrong? It seems like little demoness Mu Xueqing is sparring with someone. Sparring with someone? Who would be so daring as to fight with her? Zhao Wuxing? Or is it Lu Changyan? It isn't them. I haven't seen the other party before either. It is an extremely beautiful lady, so beautiful that I couldn't believe my eyes. The battle between 2 beauties. I have to take a look then. Sensing the strong smell of gunpowder between the duo, the other students, who were walking leisurely around the campus, were immediately roused and innumerable people gathered around the sparring ring. Mu Xueqing was both beautiful and strong, and she had always been in the center of attention in the academy. Not to mention, the lady she was facing was even more beautiful than her. In an instant, the attention of the entire academy was focused on this duel. Large circles of crowd gathered around the sparring ring. She's indeed beautiful. Why haven't I met her before? She must be new. Otherwise, given her beauty, it is impossible for me to not have heard of her. Upon seeing Zhao Ye, the eyes of the student population lit up. After triggering her purine body, her disposition and appearance became refined, and she stood out from the typical ladies. In an instant, she attracted everyone's gazes, and the eyes of many male students were glowing. Damn it, seeing those male students directing furious glares at her, Mu Xueqing's face steeled, and she was about to explode with fury. In the past, regardless of where she went, she was the center of attention. But at this moment, her spotlight was being stolen by some other lady. How could she take this lying down? If I don't leave you smash your head until you even forget your own name, I'll forsake my surname. Clenching her jaws forcefully, Mu Xueqing clenched her fists tightly. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.